Have a live mic. We'll get everybody seated and settled in. Good morning. Good morning. As is usually the case, we're going to do the prayer and the pledge, and I believe an honored guest is here today to lead us in a prayer. Father Orsi, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
If everybody would please rise.
I'm honored. The opening prayer for the centennial.
Hey, how about that?
Who would have thought this 100 years ago? Let us pray. Dear God, we come to you at the beginning of this new year, begging your blessings on our newly constituted Board of County Commissioners. Bless your sons, Chris Hall, Dan Cowell, Rick Castro, Bert Saunders, and Bill McDaniel. Fill them with a spirit of service for the people of Collier County who have entrusted them with our community's well-being. Let them be selfless in their proposals, deliberations, and voting to safeguard our wholesome environment for our businesses, health care, and for our families. We ask you, O God, to open their minds and hearts to find creative ways to make affordable housing available for those who serve us. Amen. Give them the courage they need to move quickly to provide a mental health facility in our county. May your spirit guide them in supporting the Sheriff's Department to fight the proliferation of drugs, and bless them as they support the work of St. Matthew's House and of the David Lawrence Center. We ask you to bless our outgoing Commissioner, Bill McDaniel, for the work he has done and for his gracious leadership. We ask you to give Rick Castro the gifts of right judgment and courage as he assumes the chairmanship of the board. Fill him with vision for the future of our county, and give him a gentle spirit to lead us in unity for the common good of all. Amen. We thank you for all the blessings you have bestowed on this beautiful county of ours, O God, and keep us all always in your love. Amen.
This morning, we're going to ask Commissioner Cowell, if you would please lead us in the pledge. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There we go. And just one little correction. I don't like to ever correct the priest, but I am the outgoing chair, not the outgoing commissioner, unless you're got a little prophetic thing going on this morning.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
I was half right.
We had a meeting last night. We got a couple of things we want to talk about.
Okay, so there may be more going on than I'm actually aware of. So. Okay, all right, let's take care of some of our business, and then we have a little frivolity we have to do and have a changing of the guard here. So with that, good morning, County Manager.
Good morning. Agenda changes for today. First, continue item 11C to the February 14th, 2023 BCC meeting. This is a recommendation to direct the county manager to bring an agreement with Comcast Cable Communications, LLC, to a future Board of County Commissioners meeting to expand broadband and other cable-related services to identified underserved portions of Collier County. This is being continued at staff's request. Continue item 16D1 to the January 24th, 2023 BCC meeting. This is a recommendation to approve and authorize the removal of uncollectible accounts receivables in the amount of $53,747.18 from the financial records of the Library Division in accordance with Resolution Number 2006-252, and authorize the chairman to execute the attached resolution. This is also being moved at staff's request. Continue item 16C2 to the January 24th, 2023 BCC meeting. Recommendation to approve a resolution removing uncollectible accounts receivable and their respective balances from the financial records of the Collier County Public Utilities Department in the amount of $539.44 within the Water Sewer District Operating Fund and Landfill Operating Fund. This is being moved at staff's request. Continue item 16G1 to the January 24th, 2023 BCC meeting. It's a recommendation to approve and authorize the removal of uncollectible accounts receivable in the amount of $2,050.36 from the financial records of the Airport Authority Fund in accordance with Resolution 2006-252 and authorize the chair to execute the attached resolution. Finally, this one being moved at staff's request. Move item 16K6 to be item 12B. This is one of our time certain items for 10 a.m. This is a report to the Board of County Commissioners in response to public comments at the December 13th, 2022 regular meeting regarding potential conditions required by a COVID-19 extra mile migrant farm worker grant. This is being moved at Commissioner Saunders, Commissioner McDaniel's, and Commissioner Hall's separate requests. I have an agenda note. That's to correct a discrepancy in the title of item 9B. It should be recommendation to deny rather than recommendation to approve to align with the recommendation published in the executive summary. Finally, we have time certain items. Companion items 9A and 9B will be heard following the completion of items under sections 11 and 12 of the agenda. These are the Isles of Capri mixed use plan unit development zoning district items. And as I noted, item 12B will be heard at 10 a.m., and this is the report on the COVID-19 extra mile migrant farm worker grant. We have court reporter breaks scheduled for 10:30 and 2:50. With that, I have no further changes.
Okay, so we're going to do that 12B at time certain. That's good. I like that. Before we go into the approval of the agenda and adjustments, Troy shared with me that there may be some folks that are here and or Zooming that want to have comments. So let's hear the public comment before we actually accept and set the agenda.
At this point, Mr. Chair, I don't have my Zoom speaker online, but I do have two people here in the room to speak on item 16C1. Tricia Campbell will be followed by Scott Soderstrom. And folks, you can use either podium. Scott, if you can wait at this podium.
Morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of our community of my name is Patricia Campbell, President of Riviera Golf Estates Homeowners Association. I reside at 149 Estelle Drive, and I have the tail end of a cold, so I'm sorry. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of our community of 690 homes, which directly abuts the golf course, Riviera Golf Course, which has utilized the contracted county IQ water rights as a means to maintain the grass and other vegetation on the land for over 7 plus or minus years. On behalf of our community, I wanted to make it clear, despite what the background information provided to the commissioners may suggest, that our community objects to the termination of the IQ water rights associated with this property. We first communicated our objection to the county manager, county attorney, and former commissioner of District 4 in my email message to the above persons on September 14th. Our association only received notice of this recent proposed termination of IQ irrigation rights by the public posting of the commissioner's meeting agenda for today. As of all of you have most recently aware, this golf course property has been the subject of intent to convert application process during 2022, which proposes to rezone the land for a high-density residential development of give or take 384 homes on this property, which has served as both our existing drainage system and floodplain for about 50 years. And has successfully protected our HOA properties from flood damage through Wilma, Irma, and recently Ian. Needless to say, it is a critical element to our community safety. I have been advised by staff in the water use group that a cancellation of this contract means that any future landowner will have to reapply and will fall to the bottom of the waiting list to have these rights restored. We therefore ask you, as the ultimate decision maker for the county, who may be asked to render a decision on a potential rezoning application to not take the symbolic step in favor of a future development of the land to maintain the maintain the neutral position of maintaining all current conditions on the land until the proposed future property use is fully evaluated by county staff and the Planning Commission. We therefore respectfully request that the board table this IQ item use termination request at the present time and thereby assuring the objectivity of any rezoning process going forward. Doing so will also not make it important for a third-party
Ma'am,
purchaser.
we got it.
Okay, you
My
got
quest-
it?
Yeah, I got it. Are you here to speak on the same thing?
Yes.
Okay, let me, if, I'm gonna give you your 3 minutes if you want to, but, let's move that to the top and have a discussion about it, if it's the will of the board,
Absolutely.
Yes,
okay? This is the first I've heard of this,
yes, same
Oh.
here.
so, and your commissioner is saying the same thing, so I would concur that we should, Commissioner Saunders?
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's move this to the regular agenda,
Yeah,
because,
that's what I said to the top.
Oh,
That's what I
I'm
meant.
sorry.
Let's move it up to the
Understand
top, out of the consent. We'll have a discussion about it and then make a decision as to whether we need to continue it or go forward.
Okay. Great,
Okay.
Thank you.
You want us,
Would you
want
prefer him to speak now, or do you want to
want
wait
us
till?
to talk you out of it?
I mean, I'll try to make it brief here.
Okay.
My name is, well, first of all, good morning. My name is Scott Soderstrom. I'm also a resident at Riviera Golf Estates. I'm also a licensed professional engineer with the state of Florida with over 40 years of civil engineering experience. And I just want to let you know that the ramifications of this happening is it's going to be killing the grass, killing the trees,
Got it.
erosion control type
Save it.
issues.
Do you have a few minutes to stay until we actually
Sure.
hear this item?
Yes,
I'd like to hear your comments then, rather than repeating all that right now.
absolutely. Okay, thank you.
What item is that?
11E.
11E. Okay. Didn't mean to interrupt you, sir, but it was, all right. Is that all?
That's all for this item, sir.
Well, let's start down here at my far left. Commissioner Kowal, good morning.
Good morning.
Do you have any adjustments to today's agenda and/or ex parte?
Not for any of the agenda items.
No agenda items? How about, and no, okay, an ex parte on the consent and summary? You're all good? Commissioner Saunders?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no changes to the agenda and no ex parte.
All right. Good morning, Commissioner Hall.
Good morning. I have no ex parte on the agenda or consent. I would like to make a comment on one of the things that we are going to consent, just for a comment. One of them is where we purchased a temporary easement for a water well, and that easement was created with no end date, and it was an oversight by us. It was also an oversight by the owner. And we are going to consent to give him that easement back, but there's value in, you know, it's not just our mistake, it was his mistake too. So for some compensation for us to put an end date on that, I think would be worth consideration in the future.
You want to pull it and have a discussion about it?
Not really, just a
I
comment.
mean, have you talked to staff and you're satisfied that the path
Yeah.
we're on's okay?
It's too late in the game now, but I just wanted to make a comment going
Never
forward.
too late, sir. This is the
I know,
minute.
but it's something we've committed to, and I want to honor our word. But
Okay.
going forward, we can consider it.
Very good. Very good. Commissioner LaCastro.
No changes, no ex parte.
Okay, and I have no changes nor any ex parte on the consent and summary agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda as amended and the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as amended and adjusted. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign, same sound, so moved. Now we have 2B.
Yes, item 2B is a recommendation that the board authorize the new chairs for both the Board of County Commissioners and the Community Redevelopment Agency to execute all documents approved at both this meeting and those documents which were previously approved but are pending signature.
So henceforth, let's go ahead and do the CRA chairs, because that's something we can do right now, and then we'll do the changing of the guard for the other and call for a motion on that. So who are the current chairs of the CRAs? Me and
You and Commissioner Taylor,
Col-
now Commissioner Cowell, right? Commissioner Taylor gone,
I'd
and now
like-
Commissioner Cowell.
Make a nomination.
Yeah, I nominate that we, keep you all as the chair and co-chair of the CRA.
It's been, you don't get a choice.
I already
He was down there saying, he was down there saying he would accept the position, and no, you don't.
He was somehow mulling it over.
I'd accept it back on the 13th.
Oh, that was the advisory portion. So
Right.
we have the actual sitting chairs and then the advisory committee.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that Commissioner McDaniel and Commissioner Cowell remain as the chairs for the CRAs within our community. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign, so moved. Now,
Floor is yours, Mr. Chairman.
yeah, and I'm gonna be brief. This is, and bear with us, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna change chairs. We do this on an annual basis. Commissioner Saunders was kind enough to bring forward a resolution quite some time ago that allowed for this to be a fairly seamless process. I have a personal belief, I have many personal beliefs, but with regard to my service as your county commissioner, the additional duties as serving as the chair have been my honor. And I want to say that to you all, everyone on my mom's watching somewhere out there, so I want to share with you that it has in fact been my honor. I do believe that the administration of the chair has to primarily run and officiate an efficient meeting. I've never regarded myself as having any additional authority than any of my colleagues up here. So with that, I want to thank you all. We do have a process here. You want to speak?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment to your mother.
Oh. She's watching.
I thought this would be the appropriate time.
Okay.
I just want to let you know your son has done a remarkable job as our chair. He has been a great county commissioner, and you should be very proud of your son.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. Commissioner LaCastro,
Yeah,
as the incoming chair.
As the incoming chair, as Commissioner McDaniel said, we all take a turn here, so it's not a matter of, if you've all been watching the proceedings up in Washington, D.C., this is I think, a bit more cordial and a much more streamlined process, and thanks to, Commissioner Saunders for ironing this out, I guess, years ago. So we all get our turn, but I do think that the chair has a responsibility to be connected with the staff, maybe sometimes on certain issues a little bit closer, and as Commissioner McDaniel said, oversee a efficient and professional process. So I think, as we all take our turn, and Commissioner Hall will be up here 1 year from now, it's all our responsibility to have our radar on and our intent up to make things as efficient, as professional as possible, and get things done. And where we see the need for some improvement, share it with our colleagues here so that we continue to do that. On a personal note, not only do I want to thank Commissioner McDaniel for his long service and especially as chair, but I'll just tell you personally, when I was a candidate and I reached out to all the sitting commissioners, I got to speak with all of them. But Commissioner McDaniel spent just a little bit more time with me at a time when there was plenty of candidates in the race. I certainly wasn't the front runner, and I always appreciated that. Know how busy these jobs are, and so to be able to speak with you and get your thoughts and ask questions about some big issues that were coming up in the county was very helpful. So I've really been honored, as we all have, to work closely with you here. And before we sort of give you your piece of wood, the plaque, and move seats, I want to invite the other commissioners. I don't know if Commissioner Saunders had, I'll start with him, if he had anything personal and additional that he wanted to say.
I just want to thank Commissioner McDaniel for his leadership, and I know that he will continue to serve the community in a very capable manner as he has in the past, and just thank you for your service this past year.
Commissioner Cowell, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I haven't had the pleasure of serving under Commissioner Daniels as long as the other commissioners here, but the last few months have been very easy, process for us coming in and coming on board with Commissioner Hall. And I have to say the same thing, when I was in campaigning, and anytime I ran across Commissioner McDaniel, he would always give me a little bit of words of advice, and a lot of those things really helped me along the way. And I just want to thank him for that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Hall?
I'll just ditto it all. I remember, I appreciate your help in the campaign, and then after the primary, you know, the onboarding process, the thousands of questions that I asked and the time that you spent with me. And I'll never forget, you know, I never have said anything politically correct a lot. And I said something, and I got a phone call, and he precursed it with, "What I'm about to say, I'm going to say in love." And I always appreciated that. So thank you.
To you, my friend. To you. You want to get the deed done?
I guess somebody make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Commissioner Rick Castro as our chair.
I'll second.
I'll do a separate motion for the vice chair.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we appoint Commissioner Castro as the incoming chair. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign, same sound, so moved.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, and this is to Mr. Chairman Castro at this point. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Chris Hall as our vice chairman.
I second it. Or you second it?
You can't
Okay.
second it.
All right.
You can. You can do whatever you want. You're the chair now.
Seconded by Commissioner McDaniel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Nobody voted present, by the way, so it was a unanimous vote. Do you see how efficient we are here in Collier County?
No concessions.
All right, I got Commissioner McDaniel, we'll do it up down there. Let me grab it.
Maria was specific about having this done for the pictures.
Didn't even get any concessions.
They were good. Remember you told me you had to get people?
So, Mom, if you're watching at home, your son here, William L. McDaniel, Collier County Commissioner, District 5, in grateful appreciation for outstanding leadership as chairman of the board for 2022. Raising a pretty good son, we think, presented by the Collier County Board of Commissioners, January 10th, 2023. Sir, thank you for the service. Team? Yeah. Put the corn between a couple of rows. Okay, let's get to work. Go back to work.
This won't take but about 2 seconds here, 2 minutes, so. Just got to grab my stuff. And my coffee. How about that? No harm, no foul. By the way, hey, Chris, these things are adjustable. I don't have to leave you too. Did you write that down?
Trying to get your back to the. Okay, let it be known too that no concessions were made to anybody that voted unanimously here. Nobody was promised any commissioner seats or anything like that, right? So, okay, well, we move along with the with our process here. County manager.
Sir, that brings us to item 4, proclamations. Item 4A is a proclamation designating January 16th, 2023 as a day to remember and celebrate Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, to be accepted by Vincent Keys, President, Collier County Branch of the NAACP, and other distinguished guests. Good morning.
Okay, yep, I'll take it. Got it. Thank you, ma'am. I'll make sure they all get one.
Send me another email, because we answer everything.
Shows up early, I like that. Yeah, it's a military man.
Are you? Likewise, sir. Thank you.
That's a difficult move, to move to the right, especially for.
That was a Cupid shuffle is what we just saw there.
All right, here we go. On 3. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Mr. Keys? Mr. Keys, I'm sure you'd like to say a few words? Yes, sir, absolutely.
They moved to the left.
Good morning, Mr. Chair,
Good morning, sir.
commissioners, and staff. I want to say my name is Vincent Keys. I have the honor and privilege to serve this great county, and it is my privilege to invite you to the first parade for this centennial year, and we would like to have everyone come out, including the public. We intend to have a day of service on January the 16th. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy of inclusion and diversity. We would just love to have everyone out. The city of Naples will be celebrating the centennial celebration, and we'd like to make sure that it's a big celebration for us all. So please, I know you have staffing needs, and hopefully sometime in the future we can see the county with a float to be in the parade. So please, we would love to have the county out in full force. And if we could have some of the vehicles there, it would be great. So please, plan to attend. We absolutely ask everyone to come out. Thank you. And it does begin at Broad and 3rd, and it starts at 11 a.m. The lineup begins at 9:30. And we look forward to a big celebration in Cambria Park at 12 o'clock. Any questions? If there are, please see Diane Keys.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And of course, it's on Monday, January 16th, goes without saying. So look forward to seeing you there. Okay. County Manager, next proclamation.
Item 4B is a proclamation designating January 2023 as Human Trafficking Awareness Month in Collier County. Miss Oberhaus was unavoidably detained this morning. The proclamation will be delivered to her and the Shelter for Abused Women and Children.
Thank you. Business of the month?
Yep. That brings us to item 5. Item 5A is the presentation of the Collier County Business of the Month for January 2023 to the Inn at Pelican Bay. The award will be accepted by Steve Dorsey, General Manager. Also attending are Michael Dalby, CEO, and Bethany Sawyer, Vice President of Membership and Investors, the Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce.
Here you go, Bethany. Congratulations.
You scared?
Here we go. One, two, three. And one more.
Great. You want to say? Did any of you like to say a few words, sir? The floor is yours.
Thank you. As said, my name is Steve Dorsey. I'm the general manager at the Inn at Pelican Bay. We are a 100-room small hotel. We have 41 employees currently. The hotel's been there 30 years. Our group has owned it for 16 years. It's locally owned, locally managed, no outside sources. Everyone's Collier County residents that has anything to do with the ownership of the hotel. It's been an interesting 90 days. We had the hurricane. We had beaches closed, but when the beaches opened up, the phone started ringing. So it's going to be a great year this year, I think, for the hotels in Collier County. During Ian, we took in Gold Star families for free to help them. We had about 7 rooms of Gold Star families with us. And we took in a number of other people in the area that were just displaced during that time period. And then, you know, November came along, December, everyone kind of found a place of where they need to be and everything. But we take huge pride in being part of Collier County. Our little hotel, it's a 100-room hotel. Like I said, if you went on TripAdvisor for the past 2 years, we're ranked the #1 hotel out of 57 hotels in Collier County. And that's on guest scores, not on ads or anything like that at all. But this is a great honor. I really appreciate the chamber and everyone honoring us for this. So it's we really enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Congratulations.
Commissioners, before we move on, can we get a motion to accept the proclamations?
So moved. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved.
Thank you. Item 5B is the Artist of the Month, and we have something a little bit different this month. So we have Melissa Blazer, Supervisor of Elections Office Chief Deputy, is here to talk to us about our artists.
About that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. Again, for the record, my name is Melissa Blazer. I'm the Chief Deputy in the Supervisor of Elections Office. And this month's artists, plural, of the month are students in grades K through 12 that participated in the Supervisor of Elections Office annual Art for Democracy contest. The vision for the Art for Democracy contest is to obtain, showcase, and judge artwork that expresses what the democratic process means to student artists in Collier County. The Collier County Supervisor of Elections Office, in partnership with Collier County Public Schools and Champions for Learning, annually invites students in grades K through 12 to submit original artwork with voting and election-related themes. Since its launch in 2015, the contest has received hundreds of original pieces of artwork from students across the county. And the winning artwork has been published in election-based calendars, notebooks, and has also served as our I Voted sticker during the 2020 and 2022 election cycles. So we just wanted to thank you for the opportunity for us to display the artwork created by these students. As you can see all around you, we are very proud of them. We are excited to showcase and share their artwork with you and throughout the month of January. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Blazer.
Thank you.
Mr. Keyes, I'll also note in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, there is a portrait back there that is just so high quality. I mean, if a student did that, you'll see that it's on the far wall. But we invite you to take a look at the art done by our local students. Okay, County Manager, next.
Item 7 is public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda. Troy?
Mr. Chair, we have 9 registered speakers on this item. I'll remind the speakers to use both podiums and please queue up. Your first speaker is Jackie Key. She'll be followed by Lourdes Armas.
Good morning, Jackie Kay. Not only is righteous anger biblical and demonstrated by Jesus, it's also protected under free speech. Free speech can be suppressed only when there is credible fear that injury or violence will occur. A major grievance I have is that of toxic and morally corrupt tyrants being appointed to leadership position at local, state, and federal levels. A tyrant is defined as someone who treats people as they have the authority over in an unfair, oppressive, and cruel manner. Additionally, tyrants ridicule, demonize, and persuade anyone or persecute anyone who opposes their agenda, and they encourage their followers to do the same. Key characteristics of tyrants include traits as a thirst for power, lying and deceit, discrimination, lack of empathy, grandiosity, blame others for their incompetence and inaptitude, and an indifference to morally conventional and laws and rules. Tyrants are also corrupt and abuse their political power to benefit themselves, their donors, special interest groups, and like-minded supporters. There's also an abusive function in which corrupt leaders perform or fail to perform any act or duty for the express purpose of benefiting themselves, another person, or entity. Tyrants are insecure bullies who manipulate control through threats, fears, and abuse, and often solicit support via charisma, handouts, and favorable decisions. That they, in fact, encourage loyalty to themselves rather than to God, community, state, and country. Such types of corruptions include graft, which is a use of deception and the subordination of public interest for personal benefit or gain, and a callous disregard for the consequences suffered by the public. Influence peddling, networking, abuse of discretion, as well as favoritism and clientelism, which is quid pro quo when the special interest groups are benefited at the expense of the public. Lastly, the destructive consequences of corruption include rigged economic and political systems, undermining sustainable development goals, economic loss and inefficiency, poverty and inequity, and failures in infrastructure. As we all know, these types of deals are made in backroom and secrecy, and you can always see the consequences of them based on the deterioration of our community. Thank you.
Before I call this next speaker, I want to remind everyone, please silence your cell phones. Next up is Lourdes Armas. She'll be followed by Tim Carpenter.
Ma'am, morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to use myself as an example. I have had housing instability since COVID. I'm a professional woman. I'm 58 years old, and you know, it hasn't been stable. In Hurricane Ian, I was displaced. I'm a Marco Island resident, and I'm here today because in November, I was given a letter of approval for rental assistance, relocation, rehousing, to stabilize the people, to stabilize the community. I went out, I got the lease. I'm supposed to have been moving in on January 15th. On January 3rd, I received a letter saying that my lease is, they had the lease since 12/22. On 1/4, I get an email saying that I am not going to be able to be housed because they ran out of money. And that brings me to my question. On October 25th, HUD came here with President Biden, and they gave Collier County almost $900,000 emergency funds to augment the regular rental assistance programs. As of today, I am told that possibly in February that program will begin. And I have been up and down Human Services Division speaking to different people. I am told that the Board of Commissioners has not approved the disbursement of those funds. So I'm here to ask the question, where's that money?
You going to address or you want me to?
No, if you want to address it.
Number one, I just want to clarify, I think today we moved some money around to be able to support the issue with rental assistance. That happened in the consent agenda before we started. Number two, this is not the time for questions and answers. This is for you to share your concerns and what's in fact going on. Speak with Commissioner LaCastro. He is the commissioner of District 1. He's the chairman of the board. You greeted him when you walked up. Share with him what you in fact have going on, and I'm sure he will assist you to get you through the process.
Thank you, because right now the process is not working, and that's why I'm here today.
You're not the Lone Ranger.
No, but you know, problems are meant to be solved. And so unless we speak up, everybody keeps passing the ball. And here we are today, and it's just not working. There's many programs. It's a large budget. It's many pieces to grapple, and it's personal. It's housing. You can't get more personal than that, but it's not working.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what I would say, thank you. First of all, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And you're in the building where this is where those funds are controlled. So
Yes.
I will say to the county manager, don't leave this building until somebody from our staff immediately connects with you. Second, a lot of people have been helped by that money, but every person is important. So if you're one of those that fell through the crack, the dates are a little weird, we didn't approve something or whatnot, we care about that. So don't leave here until our county manager has connected you with a person. And then I would like a feedback on her particular case and how we're addressing it aggressively.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your next speaker is Tim Carpenter. He'll be followed by Tauhida Mateen.
Good morning, commissioners, public, and Bill McDaniel's mother. All of you, glad to be here this morning. All men are created equal. We've been working on that for 250 years in our nation, and we still don't have it exactly right, but we're working on it. I can remember in the late 60s, early 70s with bell-bottom pants, 2-inch belt, hair down to my shoulders, rioting and working for those efforts to make everything equal for everyone. But it's not equal. It doesn't ever become equal. We hear words as we get closer to being equal. We hear words like entitled, I deserve it, I should have it, it belongs to me. All of these things we hear as we get closer to equality, but we have turned equality into equity. And we have to be careful as we make the transition and make sure our focus stays on equality. It is not equality when a woman's feelings outweigh the life of a baby. That is not equality. That is equity. It is not equality when a medical worker, a teacher, a county employer gets housing assistance, and a lady that has a cleaning business moves from her 3-bedroom house into a 1-room apartment because that's all she can afford. That is equity. That is not equality. Also, it is not fair, it is not equitable, it is not equal when a tenant can give a landlord a 30-day notice because that person went to seed the table and met somebody they hooked up with and moved in and gave the landlord the 30-day notice they're leaving, where the landlord has to give a 60-day notice because he got his utility bills and there is a water bill and electric bill that he opened at the same time, and he got shocked when he did it. Because that bill was 40% increase, he has to wait 60 days before he can make any decisions or make any changes. So we have to move our county closer to equality, further from equity. You guys are elected to provide equality in the county, not to provide equity to the people that live here in Collier County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Your next speaker is Hita Mateen, and she will be followed by Rayanne Burton.
Good morning. My name is Hita Mateen, the United States Small Business Administration, the SBA, and I'm temporarily deployed here. So first of all, I just want to say that the declaration, of course, is winding down, but people still need the help and the resources to start their recovery process, work through their recovery process. The physical deadline for people to apply with FEMA and submit their SBA application for physical damages is in 2 days. So, we've been on boots on the ground since September, making sure that we get the word out for those watching, those in the audience, to make sure that you understand. You can call FEMA. You can register through your app. No matter how small you think your damages are. If they refer you to the SBA for those homeowners and renters, submit that application as soon as possible. If you do not submit that SBA application after a referral from FEMA, that recovery referral process ends. So we just, make sure that people understand how intricate the SBA piece is to the recovery puzzle for long-term recovery. The SBA phone number is 800-659-2955. You can get into the queue, make sure that you're in that process to start that, recovery process, of course, before the deadline ends for those physical damages. Businesses, you have until June 29th, 2023 to submit an application for working capital. So for those businesses who were shut down, maybe still shut down, they can get working capital from the SBA to pay their taxes, to pay their light bill, just to stay in business as if Hurricane Ian never happened. Right now, just a couple numbers, the SBA has approved over $1.4 billion in Florida and all of the declared counties under Hurricane Ian. Collier County is $74 million of that. Applications are in process daily, so that number is fluid, and it keeps increasing day by day as we keep approving those loans. To find a disaster recovery center, the DRC locator is on FEMA.gov. You can find SBA is ready and willing there to make sure that you get the help that you need. You can go in to talk about your denials, your reconsideration. I'm running out of time. So I just want to mention that the Collier County Disaster Recovery Center, I just got this, will be temporarily closed this Wednesday, January 11th from 9 a.m. to 1:30. They're just moving to a different room in the same building at the Eagle Lake Community Park. I do want to thank you, Commissioner Hall, and your Executive Coordinator, Jarvis, for your communication and collaboration with me and the county PIOs. Thank you so much for helping us get the information out. Have a good day.
Yes, sir.
Ask her. Would you like some more time?
No, not really. I think I got it out there. If it's, on video and people can see that you're constituents, but I will continue to keep in touch via email. And, I'm handling Lee County as well. So I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to do the work that I can to make sure that everyone knows that deadline is coming up and, get into the centers, call the 1-800 number. So
the SBA's been invaluable in assisting our community throughout the process and helping folks with the disaster cleanup and so on and so forth. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for all of your help.
Yeah, and I'll echo to folks in the audience and the people that are watching. Please reach out to the county staff, and I think I speak for all. I know I speak for every elected official up here. If there's somebody that, much like this lady, in her example, has fallen through the crack or they're not really sure where to go, we can direct the traffic by a mere email, to us or phone call to our office. And so we have people that are here to help. We appreciate you extending your hours and, moving around to different locations to make it more convenient for our citizens. And a lot of people have been helped, but we need to find those pockets of people that didn't get the information properly. And, we're all here to assist with that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good job.
Good morning, Ms. Burton.
Your next speaker is Rayanne Burton. She'll be followed by Scott Sherman.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Rayanne Burton, Rural Golden Gate Estates. I don't get up at 6 a.m. to drive today, 1 hour and 10 minutes for fun. I have grave concerns about the destruction and endangering of the estate's wildlife and development issues that may even affect me keeping my home. That is why I have submitted a GAC application submitted August the 7th, 2022, was supposed to be interviewed November 14th. The very day of the interview, received an email, would not be interviewed that night, but come anyway. At the meeting, I and another applicant, who both live in the estates, were told that there were other applicants, but they didn't know who they were. Told that we would be interviewed later, but no date was set for the rest of the year. Now, almost 2 months later, and 5 months since I sent in the application, I thought there was a cutoff date for the application. It's my understanding that GAC is vital for the final disbursement of the lands held for the estates. So my question is, 1, why is the GAC not holding monthly meetings? 2, why were the interviews canceled? 3, who are the late applicants? 4, why have I and the other applicant not been notified of upcoming meetings? 5, why the GAC members are being so secretive about my interview? 6, why the holdup? It's been 5 months since the application sent in, and 2, since I was told I'd be interviewed. 7, when will our interviews be held? Since I live in Golden Gate Estates, the GAC is important enough for me to want to be part of making decisions that benefit Golden Gate Estates. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Scott Sherman. He will be followed by Beth Sherman.
Good morning, Commissioners. Welcome to the new Commissioners as well. I want to let you know my name is Scott Sherman. I was a biomedical engineer for 35 years, and I have extensive experience reading and interpreting medical journal articles. I also have extensive training and understanding of microbiology. Therefore, I have the credentials and authority to speak on the following matters. We had egregious failures. Okay, sorry. I only have 3 minutes. We had egregious failures during the last 2 years when following guidance from the Florida Health Department, the CDC, and the WHO. The state, national, and global organizations were so wrong it borders on incompetence or indicates malicious intent. To begin, I want to point out that these organizations pushed our local failures in science and critical thinking during this time. The first was the school board's reference for why they chose to mandate masks. It was not a peer-reviewed paper, but an NCH white paper on personal protective equipment, or PPE. The paper concluded there was about a 1% decrease in transmission of viruses when their staff was wearing goggles, masks, gowns, and gloves. So apparently no one read or understood the science upon which this decision was based. These organizations convinced us to make fundamental changes on how we approach healthcare completely. Before 2019 and for millennia, we only quarantined and tested the sick. During COVID, they convinced the world to quarantine and test the healthy. They skewed the data by including all the deaths of persons with COVID instead of reporting those that died because of COVID. They hid the fact that most of the COVID deaths reported were patients had at least 3 comorbidities. They coerced doctors to ignore multiple historically proven treatments and made it illegal for a doctor to decide what was best for their patients. They pushed an experimental mRNA technology that did not stop infection or transmission. Not only was it ineffective, it has now been proven to cause a lot of harm. The Florida Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Latapo, has a statement currently on the Florida Department of Health website that says there's an 84% increase in the relative incidence of cardiac-related death among males 18 to 39 years old within 28 days following mRNA vaccination. So this county needs safeguards against medical tyranny. If another pandemic disease arises, we must go back to the older methods of containment. We must quarantine and test only the symptomatic individuals. We try proven treatments and make it legal for a doctor to decide what is best for their patient. We must not allow unelected global organizations and pharmaceutical companies to dictate treatments en masse for our county. We stand at a crossroad. We have new leadership in this county with whom we hope to work together with for the best of all our people. Our call to action is to lead this county with a biblical perspective. We just want to remind our elected officials to be careful and measured with decisions on scientific matters. Critically think and challenge all the science before accepting a course of action. This is what real scientists do. We critically think and we challenge that which does not hold up to scrutiny. Thank you and God bless.
Your next speaker is Beth Sherman. She will be followed by Stephanie Norton.
Hello, thank you very much. My husband just mentioned the Florida Department of Health's statement by Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Latapo with the 84% increase in the relative incident of cardiac-related death among males 18 to 39 years old within 28 days following mRNA vaccination. They're working on getting that up on the screen for you. My request to you is throughout this entire pandemic over the past 2 years, you guys have put out every single statement that the Florida Department of Health on your social media. However, you have not put this out. So I would request that this goes out immediately. It's an ongoing issue of safety within not only the county, but the human race. I also wanted to talk about some new data that I've come across. It's from a woman named Sasha Latapova. She is a former executive of a pharmaceutical company, and she is a contact resource organization manager. She states that she has obtained new information on the clinical trials of the coronavirus vaccine. This was released through Freedom of Information Act requests from the Department of Defense and the Securities and Exchange Commission disclosures. There are over 400 docs available for viewing. The DoD used shady contracting practices and laws previously put in place to shield critical companies. Clinical trials for the vaccine, the coronavirus vaccine, were not even conducted, and they set motions in place to shield everyone involved. If you took this injection and you are now part of the clinical trial and you were deceived, there were many people deceived, including the FDA employees, because the scam was driven from the top down. And when I say the top down, I mean the Pentagon. These documents were released through our own Department of Defense. The information consent requirements were waived so that subjects do not have to be informed what is going on, and it is deemed, quote, not in their best interest. This was an amendment put in place by Obama for use during a public health emergency. This is why they keep extending the public health emergency. These are not vaccines. In the documents, they are listed as, quote, military countermeasures, and they cannot be investigated because of the law. The Trump and Biden administration declared COVID as an act of war. This is how they are able to distribute an experimental injection as a, quote, countermeasure. So why is a health event being kept so secret? That's a great question. I implore you to look into it. The Florida Supreme Court ruled that Governor DeSantis can impanel a grand jury to investigate COVID-19 vaccine makers. I ask everyone for prayers on this matter for our great governor. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Stephanie Norton. She'll be followed by Randy Harris.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Stephanie Norton. I am a Marco Island native, and I'm now raising 4 boys here in Collier County. I'm also a community and education advocate for individuals and families with the autism spectrum disorder. I approached the board 1 year ago this last January as a mom of 2 boys with autism, desperate for some solutions pertaining to health and safety with interactions with the police. I'd seen a lot of things on TV on what happens when police is involved, and I was concerned. I called every number, resource that I had, and kept getting wrong numbers, companies that are out of order. And Commissioner Rick LaCastro took some time after I approached the board and connected me with Sergeant Dan McDonald. Sergeant Dan McDonald started the Autism Support Project here in 2021. He's trained over 1,200 officers. He goes around the community teaching just regular old folk like us how to interact with individuals with autism, and has created a nationwide model for other police departments across the nation. This experience, along with a few other things that have happened this year, have been the inspiration to create a nonprofit called Autism Collier, which will create dedicated resources for those who are in the community. There are many challenges that come along with life in the autism spectrum. Finding the resources and knowing who to talk to shouldn't be one of them. My public comment today is just a deep and sincere gratitude for your commitment to serve and creating equality here in Collier County. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Randy Harris. He'll be followed by Daniel Zegeric.
Ma'am, I just wanted to ask, how's your son doing? Great.
Randy Harris.
I don't see Randy.
All right, Daniel Zegeric.
My name is Daniel Zagaric. Good morning, Commissioners, and congratulations to the new commissioners, and congratulations to the old-timers that are still coming here. So,
What are you saying?
Commissioner Chairman LaCastro, in a recent newsletter, you mentioned paradise and old septic tanks in the same paragraph. Can we expect Collier County to address old septic tanks this year with urgency, especially tanks that are located so close to our precious coast? Thank you.
And I see Mr. Harris has come into the room. Randy Harris. This will be your final public speaker for public comment, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. First off, thank you, commissioners. You got a tough job, so I just pray God's wisdom over you, and I hope you'll accept that. There was a couple of headlines that hit me this week. Biden administration says post office can violate abortion bans, mail dangerous abortion pills to pro-life states. That's from lifenews.com. We've also got another headline about CVS and Walgreens as well, pouring out these pills. Look, I think you visited this once before about trying to make Collier County a sanctuary county for the unborn. I'd love to see that. I don't think you will because I know the reasons why you won't. But let me just ask you this. Some of you are old enough, and I won't point at who on this dais is probably that old, but I am. There was a movie called Field of Dreams. And there was a line in that everybody repeated forever. It said, if you build it, they will come. Well, I'm saying to you today, if you will stand for life, others will follow you. And if you take a stand for life in Collier County and say, you know what? Since 1973, we have realized that what decision was made was probably not made with any kind of scientific evidence, hardly at all, except convenience. Now we understand what life is like in the womb of a mother. And all I'm doing is just asking that we can put life back into Collier County. And if you would at least consider, please, a ban making it a sanctuary county in Collier. And I would appreciate that very much. Hey, guys, have a great day. God bless you.
Mr. Chair, I had one speaker who did not put a item number, wanted to be in this item, Desiree Borski.
Thanks for that.
Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you, commissioners. Congratulations, Rick, on being chairman. I'm always grateful for the opportunity to address this board. And I just want to say that I am super grateful that you are all taking the time to look into the grant that was awarded by the CDC. I think after listening to Scott and Beth, we all know that there's been some overreach of federal government, and we are counting on you guys to protect the people of Collier County. So we look to you and we reach out to you, and we are grateful to you for taking a stand on our behalf and protecting our human rights. Thank you very much.
Is that the last speaker? Swiller?
Yep.
Okay. County Manager, are we moving to our 10 o'clock?
We are moving to our 10 o'clock time certain.
I just wanted to say one thing about septic tanks in Paradise. It actually wasn't in the exact same sentence, and yeah, and it's because I share your thought. And I will say in Collier County, we've had it maybe not as aggressive a move, but a lot of septic tanks have been changed out. My biggest concern in District 1 is we haven't done it aggressively over the last 10 years, which we should have. So I share your concern if you would have, and thanks for being a newsletter subscriber. So more to come. But I appreciate you highlighting that.
Do they have to pay a fee to be on your newsletter?
No, might start charging. Okay, Ms. Patterson, or 10 o'clock?
Absolutely. This is formerly item 16K6, now 12B. This is a report to the Board of County Commissioners in response to public comments at the December 13th, 2022 regular meeting regarding potential conditions required by a COVID-19 extra mile migrant farm worker grant. We do have Mr. Jamie Ulmer, who will be in the room momentarily from the Healthcare Network, but we'll start with the county attorney, his item, and we have Maggie Lopez from the Office of Management Budget as well.
Commissioners, you asked me to come back on a report on this matter, which I did. This particular grant does have in boilerplate mandates and directives, none of which exist at this time. It is not very different from any other federal grant I've been working on for 20 years, where you get boilerplates of directives and mandates that never really happen. We're almost looking at like monsters in closets. I mean, you know, we think there's something there, but there's really not. It's just a simple grant, and I believe we have somebody who will speak as to what the monies were used for.
We do have Mr. Jamie Ulmer here from the Healthcare Network. He is a subrecipient of some of this money, and he's here to answer your questions and to speak to the good that's being done with this money at this point in time. Mr. Ulmer.
Good morning, and thank you. For the record, I am Jamie Ulmer, the CEO for Healthcare Network. I'd like to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come this morning. I think I've had the opportunity to meet most of you all, and will be on your calendar for those that I have not had a chance to meet. Congratulations to the new county commissioners. I'd like to also take this opportunity to say thank you for allowing me to speak for those who do not have a voice. Community health workers are different than outreach workers. Healthcare Network is one of very few federally qualified health centers, not only in the state of Florida, but throughout this region, who have certified community health workers. So what does that mean? In the state of Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, and North Carolina, there is only one certified community health worker in the state of Florida, and there is only one in North Carolina as well as Georgia. So there's only 3 in the region of 4 states. And so it makes it more applicable for the CDC to have approved us for this opportunity. So our community health workers allow us to build trust in vulnerable communities throughout Collier County by delivering culturally and language appropriate information about critical health matters. It's not specific to COVID-19. It's not specific to any mandates. It is specific to increasing healthcare access to those underserved areas of Collier County. The multilingual and multicultural team consists of registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, medical assistants, and individuals with experience in public health and health education. And this is really interesting because this is what differentiates us as a community health workers. We have healthcare providers on this team. And so when they knock on someone's door, they're able to provide aid and healthcare right there on the spot and refer them to a medical home and or an urgent care or an emergency room. To reach those living in remote areas, community health workers employ several tactics, from door-to-door, outreach, community collaboration, and participating in community events. This grant has provided the opportunity for us to hire 6 community health workers and provide extensive training. This training has been coordinated and provided by Florida State University, Partners in Health, as well as our providers from Healthcare Network. I could go through a laundry list of the different types of training, but it ranges from cultural competency, challenging household visits, secondary post-traumatic stress disorders, and mental health training. The collaboration alone is incredible because we don't do this alone. This particular grant has allowed us to work with Partners in Health, the Department of Health, RCMA in Guadalupe Center, David Lawrence Center, Immokalee Foundation, Galasanos Children's Hospital, as well as NCH Healthcare, Catholic Charities, Lippman Family Farms, and many other entities throughout Collier County. But I want to speak to the exact impact that this has provided in some of the underserved areas. We've been able to address healthcare access and disparities in healthcare in Immokalee, Everglades City, Chokoloskee, and some parts of Golden Gates 122 community events, 617 blood pressure checks from patients that we've stopped by their homes. We have blood pressure monitoring. So if a person does not have their blood pressure monitoring hooked up, after about 2 or 3 days, we can actually go to their house and say, hey, what's going on? And with that clinical team, with these community health workers, confirm that they're okay. 505 glucose reading monitors, 868 canvassing. During the actual hurricane, we used this team, although it's part of the grant, we use this team to provide tetanus shots to members within the community. 1,300 care packages, flu shots, and 14 different people that we were able to transport to healthcare facilities. I close by saying that although a grant may have some stipulations that speak specific and they use the language of COVID-19, for Healthcare Network, COVID-19 is in our rearview mirror. We're utilizing these funds as we go forward to provide healthcare access to obviously a part of Collier County that is underserved. Thank you, and I'll be willing to take any questions that you may have.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Chairman.
Looking forward to our visit. I think you are, or I am, on your calendar coming up here directly.
I am on your calendar, yes, sir.
One of the, and again, I'm the commissioner for Immokalee and an enormous amount of underserved migrant workers in our community. I was on weekly phone calls with your predecessor,
Emily.
Dr. Emily. I can't say her last name.
That's it.
Weekly phone calls with our health department and such, and there were promotors that were going door to door. One of the questions that I had for you, and if you have the information, I'd like to see it. What was being promoted? What was being done when those promotors were going door to door? There's a unique circumstance in Immokalee with the ethnicity differences of ethnic backgrounds. You mentioned in your presentation the trust level, because I know I have a portion of my community that doesn't feel well about going to the Guadalupe, so they go to RCMA, and then I have a Haitian population that won't go to either one of those, and then I have the Immokalee Workers Coalition who does their thing while they're doing their thing. So there's a lot of factions that are going on out there, but one of the things I know when we were talking that we were very much pro-education on proper health circumstances, pro-education on resources that were available for our community. But I didn't ever actually look in the goodie bag that was brought along with the promotors. I call it a goodie bag. There was a package there. I didn't ever actually look to see what was in it. I know that I had given direction for locations of assets. Government's providing assets. If you want to wear a mask, here's where you go to get a mask. If you want to take the shot, here's where you go to take the shot. I stood with the governor when he opened up the monoclonal treatment facility in Immokalee. And that was funded by federal money coming from the state to the state, and he wisely opened up those treatment facilities, and when they worked, they pulled the funding. So my question to you, and that's a long dissertation to get to where I want to go, is I'd like to know what was done by Partners in Health, because they did an enormous amount of good for our community, and I know that there are ongoing activities, but I'd like to know what was informationally put out. And
first and foremost, I think that really you had the opportunity you kind of answered some of that. In most of the information, Partners in Health obviously doesn't have the resources on the ground. So one of the reasons why they work very closely with us is because we're that conduit that can go out into the different parts of the community to speak to the people that you just spoke about. It is a complex community. You have multicultural, multilingual folks that speak very different languages. And so our team consists of people that comes from them. And they're able to walk in there and everyone knows them and can relate to that individual and listen to say that, hey, here are the resources. It's in your language. which speak to exactly what you said. Here's a primary care, healthcare for you, which is Healthcare Network there in Immokalee. We have 2 locations there. Our mobile unit will be traveling through on these days, a schedule of which days that the outreach team will be there to provide any resources. And because we have healthcare providers on that mobile unit, they actually also can provide at this time a flu shot and can provide whatever resources on their flu shot, a COVID vaccine if they choose to have that, a COVID tests. You know, Immokalee was, in Collier County, was one of the areas that received probably the most people who got sick, obviously. And so we needed to get the information to them, so if they chose to use it, they could. And that was one of the big things that Partners in Health does.
And I know you don't have the specifics, but sometime, maybe when we do have our meeting, I'd actually like to physically see how the information was disseminated and what was going on, because there's a lot of people that have a lot, and you're going to get to hear a lot of different opinions today. But it's imperative to me that and there was a previous executive director, so I want to ensure that the information that was dispersed was in fact informational.
Right. So I will make sure that we gather examples of what that was and get that to you.
Please. Thank you.
The question that I have, and I think it's on the minds of the folks that have already come to the podium, is nobody will argue that grant money hasn't done amazing things. I mean, people are here screaming for it all the time, and we fight hard to get grant money for all types of things. You know, the question is, and it's really for both of you, because the county attorney touched on it a little bit, what are the strings attached to it, or are there strings attached to it? And if there's always, somebody might make the comment, well, there's always strings, but if none of those have risen, then we're, like you said, I think you called it the monsters in the closet that may or may not be there, and that was your, your quote. But, my question is a bit more definitive, and it's not focusing on the good that the grant did. That's not really arguable. That's understood. But are there concerns? What are the concerns? If something did show itself, what would be our recourse if we thought we had significant issue with something that was being mandated because we accepted the grant money? And there's a few questions, buried in there, but I'll just throw that out so that we can have that, because that's really the discussion here. And I want to get down to the meat on the bone. So, Jesse, I'll defer to you, but then I also would like to hear from the county attorney.
Yes. Commissioner LaCastro, I would say that, like yourself, I'm a military guy. I have been dealing with my entire life, mandates, regulations, funding for certain items that you have to buy by certain requirements. It's just been the way that I've done. Healthcare Network has been in this community for going on 46 years. It is a federally funded federal qualified health center with a designation. If you receive over $750,000, you receive an audit every year. We have been receiving an audit every year for the last 46 years. And I'm saying this to say that because we receive federal funding, it is our life to receive HRSA site visits every 3 years. It is our life to go into specific systems and provide our budget and data every 3 or 4 months. This is what we do. So when we see a grant that's by any entity, more or less the federal government, it is to us a normal operation to have stipulations that fall within that. This is a little different because it's funded from ARPA funds, if I can remember correctly. And so ARPA funds does have an end date. And that end date is coming up upon us. And so whatever those stipulations are, we're so used to working within the confines of the funding like this that it is no different to us. It's normal operations. We have a robust electronic medical record system that is able to track any request for data, like how many people did we treat. I think our overall mission for this grant was to provide almost 75,000 access to health care for people in the Immokalee area, Golden Gates, and Everglades City area. And so I feel like this is, the stipulations upon us is our normal day operations with no challenges whatsoever to whatever the requests are.
Mr. Klatsky.
I'm not sure if that really answers your
I
question.
have, and I have two other commissioners that up here, but I wanted to hear from our county attorney.
Well, I would answer that by, most grants were passed through. Were passed through to the subrecipients, largely not-for-profit entities. And these subrecipients are all used to working with these grant funds and with these stipulations and everything else, and they don't have an issue with them. Having said that, I will tell you that every grant I've worked on in 20 years, whether it came from a Republican administration or a Democratic administration, has had the same darn stipulations in the back, and they go on page after page after page. And for the life of me, we've never had any issue with any federal employee telling us you have to do this or you have to do that. It's just, it's boilerplate. And the day that comes where the federal government decides to politicize grants is the day that maybe the board doesn't take the grants. But at this point in time, these grants are policy, they're not politics. And, you know, I see no harm in this grant. I see no harm in any of the grants. And, you know, if people want to pay more money in taxes, you know, to make up for the grant money that we say no to, then we can do that. But I would not recommend that course.
Okay. Commissioner Cowell.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Along the same lines with Commissioner McDaniel and LaCastro, with us, I would like to know, I came in 11th hour, myself and Commissioner Hall. We weren't here when this initiated, I think it was a year ago, and now everything's coming back up, you know, revisiting us. And I do agree. Listen, we have people here that public spoke and talked about the money that Biden brought us and the money that they want for their rent. Those are all things that we receive from the federal government, and a lot of people in this room request those things, and they request us to distribute those things. But this particular item, because it has the CDC connected to it and what's going on in light of everything in this world today, I think it heightens a lot of people's senses to what we're doing as commissioners. And like I said, I don't know when this started. You may be able to help me out, but do you know when the grant actually received the first monies and when you first had boots on the ground actually out there in the Immokalee area or wherever area you started?
Yes, Commissioner Cowell. This particular grant started in 2021. It was awarded around the August timeframe. We had about 3 or 4 months where we had to really canvass and hire the right people. It wasn't about just hiring folks to fulfill this grant. It was about hiring the right person. As Commissioner McDaniel stated, some folks on this team, about a third are Haitian, a third are Latino, and it really matters specifically to where and who. A lot of them are farm workers themselves or were, and so it took us about 4 to 6 months to identify them and hire them. So within that first year, I would say we really did not crank this seeing the true benefit of the grant until about 6 to 8 months after it started. Once it started, then we were able to hire those folks, begin to draw down funds appropriately through the county. And we now have a robust team out there that is seeing numerous people and able to be flexible and transition even to benefit and help with Hurricane Ian as they did.
Well, you made the comment that you've been in, this organization's been around in our county for 40 years.
Right, yes, sir.
So for 39 of those years up until the grant, what teams did we already have formed to carry out these duties within our area of Collier, Immokalee, which has been around for 50 years?
So,
more than that, yeah, I should say.
Well, Healthcare Network was founded in Immokalee. It was a migrant farm worker, initially health center. And so as time has evolved, it has obviously grown exponentially. This particular grant is a 3-year grant, and I failed to mention that to you. It is a 3-year grant. So year one, I mentioned about 8 months to get started. We're now in year 2. I believe that's part of the discussion that you know, we're sensitive to. We're very sensitive to the constituents' concerns, and it's not something that we take lightly. And then the final year would be year 3, which would not start until around August 2023, that we would apply for that final 3rd year. But again, if we meet the goals of this particular grant, it would have provided access to the migrant farm work community of Immokalee, Everglades, Chokoloskee, some parts of Golden Gate Estates, to potentially 75,000 residents who would not normally have received that health care. This isn't specific to COVID health care. This is health care, period.
Twice I've heard, I know our attorney had mentioned that, you know, these things are in there. I can read it myself, you know, and then other people can read it too. And it says the recipient is expected to provide. I mean, that's pretty clear. You're expected to provide, and it continues on with copies of any or access to COVID-19 data collected with the funds, including but not limited to the data related to COVID testing. So I've been in the government, my whole adult life I worked in the government, you know, so I know the government doesn't operate unless they have statistics.
Right.
And they don't operate a grant and the value of that grant and the success of that grant without collecting some sort of data. So I know myself would like to see at least a blank template of what we are collecting, what we are sharing, because I have to believe we're sharing something. I'm not going to sit here blindly and think we're not.
No, absolutely.
Because the government would not, well, you know, the only reason they're giving us grant is because they want to see what they can collect statistically, and if the grant, I mean, I'm not saying a negative way, but in a positive way, so they can devise more grants in the future to help. But I know for a fact they have to be collecting something.
Yes, the requirements of the grant obviously stipulate that to reapply every year. So year 1, we did what the grant asked us to do. We hired the team, and we begin to canvass the community for what resources they need. Year 2, we developed a plan, a program, a plan of attack per se. We did not add, obviously, emergency preparedness from a hurricane standpoint like Hurricane Ian did, but we were successful. We utilized the data that we had, some of which I quoted off to you, of numbers that are far more even extensive to that we provide back to the CDC for them to award us the final year, which would not be until the next about approximately 8 months. So yes, we do have to provide data. Again, you know, I didn't go into the specifics of the type of data that we provide, but because we're a federally qualified health center, we have to provide what's called a uniform data system data test annually. So every January, we use our electronic medical record to provide a whole host of amount of data to what is our good, what is our impact, what are we providing for Collier County. Every federally qualified health center across this entire country has to provide that data. So again, providing data is something that's a normal operations for us.
Yeah, I just don't want us to be a catalyst moving forward and in some point. I just want to see, it could be a blank template, whatever you have, if you can redact whatever, if there are names on it, because I don't want to violate anybody's HIPAA rights. And, you know, that's what I'm concerned about, that we're, you know, in some way, indirectly or directly resolved in sharing this information with people's names, illnesses, and types like that, which would be a HIPAA violation to their rights. So I don't know, and at this point, we're blind right now. We don't know if that is actually being shared or not. And if it is, then we're kind of responsible for that.
So the data that we provide is public information. There's nothing that Healthcare Network, there's very little that I can stand here and say today that Healthcare Network does that is not public information. Because we are a federal entity, as well as support the state and the local community, everything pretty much we do is public record. So I have no issues whatsoever to provide to you what it looks like when we provide for meeting the requirements of the grant as far as data is concerned.
I appreciate that.
And you'll be able to see, you may be able to share, you know, how many people may have had a certain illness, but there are no names whatsoever documented on any data points that we placed. So some of the data that I read off to you today doesn't give you the name of the actual patient who actually needed or who actually had the test or who needed transportation or who needed a referral. 150 social service referrals. We don't ever provide the name. So yes, but I'll get that to you, sir.
I do appreciate it. And we haven't had our meeting yet anyways.
You're right, right. I look forward to it.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Hall, and then followed by Commissioner McDaniel.
The way I see this, first of all, Jimmy, I appreciate the work that you've done reaching the community. And so I see two ditches. One ditch being, hey, if we don't get grants, we can't help the people. The other ditch being, if we accept any money from the federal government, we're under their tyranny, we're under their control. So to operate in the middle and to operate in balance, I can personally say, if we took money from the federal government and if we were under any guidance or directives that were mandated to us, we would return that money in a heartbeat, and I think I can speak for everyone. However, those guidance and those directives have not been mandated or have not been sent down by us receiving the money, but the potential is there. So I say it's okay. I appreciate being able to reach 75,000 people with this grant money, but at the same time, you got to understand, if and when we ever get a directive that is opposing to our personal rights and our security, we're going to send that money back, or I'm going to fight to send that money back.
Absolutely. Commissioner Hall, I'd like to say that you know, Healthcare Network, not only Healthcare Network, I've worked with FQHCs for the last close to 15 years, from the state of South Carolina to obviously Florida, in multiple areas here in the state of Florida. And I have yet to see where not only our health center and the health centers I've worked at, but other federally qualified health centers, as I'm part of the Florida Association of Community Health Centers of all 54 of us across the state, and I have yet to see where anyone ever had mandated, if we were not able to fulfill what the requirements of the grant, we would either provide the money back, and I'm speaking for pretty much all health centers, or they would ask for the money back themselves. It's pretty clear. If they give you $500,000 to build a new facility to provide healthcare access and you don't do it, then the money has to go back, because that was the requirement. And so I've not ever seen that. And I would also like to share this. There are grants that we do not apply to because we do not like what the requirements state. And so when we see something that just doesn't look right or we don't want to participate in, we don't participate in. And that's where I mentioned that we're sensitive to what our community, our patients, your constituents' feelings are. And so because we are, we kind of know what we would like to feel like would be best for our patients and what we feel like, nah, that's probably not going to cut it for us.
I appreciate that. You know, the old scab of the government is pretty tender on freedom-loving people. And so that's what the concern is. But I said, you know, while the getting's good, appreciate what you do, keep doing it, but also know for the others, if and when that ever comes, we've got your back.
Thank you.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Jamie, if you could see my notes up here, you'd know what the question is I'm going to ask, and you've mentioned it multiple times that you're a qualified federal health care provider.
Right.
Why did Collier County have to apply for this grant, name you as a subrecipient, and a pass-through to Partners in Health? And would you explain that chain of events as to why you didn't just go get the grant?
Yes, so oftentimes grants require collaboration, particularly federal grants. They do not like when you apply for a grant individually without identifying that your county, your local Department of Health does not agree with it. And so typically we'd like to see with this particular grant, as the county, we do all the legwork, the county actually applies. It's almost like our low-income pool funding that we receive from the state. That comes from the county, obviously providing the match, and thank you for that. And so here's another example. The county, we come in as a subrecipient because we have the people, obviously, the staffing, we have the means to be able to carry out the requirements of the grant. The Partners of Health is a global entity. We utilize them to do training of the team. They don't have the resources either to actually go on the ground, knock on the doors, and see the people. And so that's what brings them in to train our team to how do you do that? How do you knock on the door? How do you in a multicultural, multilinguistic community reach to the people. They're able to train us. And so that's kind of how the funds flow. County to us, utilize with Partners in Health and Training. We hire the folks. We use it for whatever resources. We have 2 mobile units that we utilize, and with those 2 mobile units, that's what some of the funding goes to help maintain those mobile units to get out to those far areas.
It was a really, really good explanation. And Commissioner Cole, you brought up Cole, forgive me, Cole, Commissioner Cole.
Forgiven.
Thank you. You brought up when this process started. This process started well in advance. The relationship with Partners in Health started well in advance of when this grant was applied for and received. Partners in we actually had discontinued any kind of cooperative efforts with 2 other medical facilities that were on the ground, theoretically helping our people, and that were literally a menace to society at the same time. And Partners in Health came in, provided promotores in advance, started through that process, multilingual, and again, dispersing this information. And so it was going on in advance of when this grant in fact came about. They are a not-for-profit organization that needs funding in order to supply these resources. And so the partnership with Healthcare Network and then ultimately with Collier County, for them being the subrecipients of this grant, is the process that in fact transpired. So, and I just want, in layman's terms, because I share Commissioner Hall, I think this whole board's concern with regard to some constitutional violation, if that were to come about from the CDC or the HHS, and we certainly wouldn't abide by it, what is the exposure for Collier County in the event that that were to transpire?
We would give the money back. If the board found something repugnant about what the federal government was asking for, you could always give the money back.
Okay, I'm completed. Thank you.
We're going to go with Commissioner Saunders, and then we're going to take a break. We have 11 public speakers, so we'll take a break after Commissioner Saunders and then go with the speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you also for your service and the services that you provide, important services in the community. I think Commissioner Hall really said it best in terms of, and so have the other commissioners, that if there are mandates that become unreasonable, then we need to know what they are and we need to return the money. But I will say that I appreciate the community comments, the folks that have come forward and raised this issue, because quite frankly, we approved the grant. I was part of the group that approved the grant back in 2021. I didn't feel that there were going to be mandates that were objectionable, but it was very important for the community and for folks that came here this morning and have come here in the past to raise this issue so that we could evaluate it, because we wouldn't have had this discussion without that. So I want to thank the community, the folks that have been here to bring this issue up. I agree 100% that if there is, on this particular grant or any grant, and we're dealing with this grant, if we receive some mandate, then we need to know what that mandate's going to be, especially as it relates to some of the COVID-19 issues. Commissioner Colwell certainly read through that, what those requirements are. That could be very objectionable if at any point in time the CDC or any federal agency requires us to start doing the types of things that are listed there. Then we need to know that immediately. And if that is the case, I agree with Commissioner Hall. The appropriate approach would be to refund that money, because we're certainly not going to engage in activities that are required by the federal government that we determine to be unconstitutional, that we determine that to be inappropriate, that to prove to be an invasion of our citizens' rights. So I want to thank the folks that brought this forward, and I look forward to the comments. But I think that hopefully in terms of the comments from the general public, that'll be fairly muted in the sense that we agree with you. We have 11 speakers, and I think 11 speakers are probably going to pretty much say the same thing, that the money should be returned and that there are objectionable requirements. But I think the bottom line is these are potential requirements. They're not likely to be enforced. The money does a lot of good. unrelated to what those objectionable requirements might be. But if that comes down, I agree with the other commissioners that I'll be right with them to return that money. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and we will resume at 10:55.
15 minutes.
Chair, you have a live mic.
Okay, we're going to bring the meeting back to order as scheduled here at 10:55, but just one housekeeping announcement. Obviously, there's a lot of people here from Isles of Capri. Just to let you know, as has always been part of this agenda, that's going to be the last item we hear today. We're going to give it the respect it deserves, not fragment it up in between a bunch of different other topics. There's a few other major things that have yet to be heard. So my announcement to you is, I feel pretty certain we wouldn't hear the Isles of Capri issue till after lunch. So you're welcome to stay, and I'm not making that announcement to chase anybody out, but just to give you an idea of a timeline. If you're not following along on the agenda, there's a couple of big items that have always been on the agenda before Isles of Capri issue. So I just make that announcement. Now we'll continue. We've got all our commissioners back. So Mr. Miller, we've got 11 speakers or
That's
more?
correct, sir. I have 11 registered speakers for this item. I'll remind the speakers, please queue up and use both podiums. Your first speaker is Richard Schroeder, followed by Mary Alger. I'm sorry.
Doctor?
Hey, Doc.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Schroeder, retired medical doctor. Advancing this accessible and equitable healthcare systems in extra-mile migrant farm workers community, what this grant really means to the CDC and those other three-letter agencies that are behind this means that by accepting the grant with stipulations attached, they must abide by the CDC recommendations. And, the CDC, in collusion with Big Pharma, is using this as a manipulation to reach a population that might not have easy access to the now proven toxic injections that have, specifically the COVID-19 bioweapon that has led to increased death and disability, that those with more resources naively avail themselves of right away, including many in this room. Between 78 and 92% of Americans took the first shot, okay? Now, the data are showing that only 18% of Americans are signing up for the next booster, and there will continue to be boosters and boosters and boosters. That in itself says a great deal about how you should be thinking about CDC involvement in our community at any level. And by the way, this initial naivety it's not just the American people in general, it's the medical community in particular. 98% of Canadian physicians took the shot, and now as a result, we have 60 dead Canadian physicians in the prime of their lives and the prime of their career. That's just a fact. So I want to just respectfully comment on the county attorney's statement and recommendations. This statement doesn't make a lot of sense for a number of reasons. The results and consequences of any mandates or directives, and by the way, these aren't probably going to come in the form of mandates that we see like the last one, where we were all here with, wondering what was going on with the masking and shutting down of businesses. They're going to come in the form of recommendations. And as I told you, the healthcare workers are not necessarily the best people to be able to critically sort this out. They've been siloed all their careers. I can attest to that. They want the easy button when it comes to something that's not in their field, and we know the rest. So we've got to look at the end user of this. I bet those farm workers would not vote to be injected with an untested emergency use product that's been now shown not to protect against illness it was supposed to, but really caused more deaths, hospitalizations, and disabilities if you got vaccinated than if you didn't. That's been shown in multiple countries. So I think the CDC-directed healthcare is not the kind of healthcare we want for our farm workers to have any more than we should want it for ourselves. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Mary Alger. She'll be followed by Carol DiPaolo.
Hello, Mary Alger, Marco Island, Florida. In order to achieve global communism, the following components must be achieved. Destroy the patriarchal family, which is the first building block of a civilized society. Government has done that by removing the father from his primary role, the provider and protector of his family. Government created the welfare state. Number 2, destroy the moral authority of a church, placing a muzzle on its eternal truths and then making it too dependent on government and NGO money when its pews empty, when truth stops being infused into the souls they're responsible for caring. Number 3, infiltrate and capture government and its unconstitutional and unelected bureaucracies. Number 4, capture military leadership. 5, capture and control the means of mass communication. Number 6, capture and control the education system, indoctrinating Marxism, which is in direct opposition to Christianity. Number 7, create a police state. Number 8, invade the country with government-dependent, unassimilating, unaccountable masses. Number 9, infiltrate and capture a bureaucratic healthcare system based on political science. The man-made COVID event, which was completely coordinated for weeks in advance at Event 21, this event coordinated October 18, 2019, was billed as a high-level pandemic exercise by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, the WEF, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This exercise illustrated areas where public and private partnerships will be necessary during a response to a pandemic in order to diminish large-scale economic and societal consequences. What this event did was to build the world's cages to which we would voluntarily enter. The captured media parroted the exact same coordinated, frightening messages. The media and its complicit experts allowed for no dissent. Faith and reason were scorned and eliminated. Livelihoods were destroyed. Only those deemed essential workers were allowed limited freedoms. School systems took draconian measures to isolate, muzzle, and frighten students. Distrust of friends, family, and neighbors ensued, breaking bonds of trust, pitting them against one another. Our military and federal-funded or licensed agencies did not allow for any religious exemption, destroying the First Amendment with an experimental injection. As you can see, the global communism is being achieved. The only thing left is for us to say no. We will not comply with this godlessness. I ask those that represent us here and now to return the money to the CDC and never again take extortion money from any other captured government agency, which hands them the key to our pre-built hellish cages. And my question is, do the multilingual, multicultural workers provide informed consent because all the injections administered via the pandemic were never given informed consent, with intentionally left blank inserts stating the ingredients and its side effects? Thank you.
Your next speaker is Carol DiPaolo. She'll be followed by Scott Kiley.
First of all, thank you, commissioners, and I wish you all the very best in this new year for the new ones that are sitting in these seats. I'm going to just throw this really all away. The whole crux of everything is, what is the information that is being given out about COVID to these migrant workers? What is the substance of the information? They're doing great work by doing blood pressure and doing glucose and all of that. That's wonderful. That's great. I condone that. I think that's fantastic. What is the information about COVID? The mandates will come as recommendations and not mandates. So that's number one. Number two, we saw what, in the past, the real science was, wear masks. We know that was not true, did not work. We were told, stand 6 feet apart. We know that did not work, and that was not real science. We were told that the money was going to be used to inform people that, there was no life-saving treatments like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Were they given that information when they were given the grant money? I probably would say no. Was the money used to encourage our people in Immokalee and Golden Gate to take the safe and effective vaccine, which I'm going to, from here on in, call the bioweapon, an injection? They should be stopped. These COVID injections need to be stopped across the board. You look at the NFL, they received money, grant money, and they encouraged every single one of their players to take the injection. And we saw on public stage what happened. You saw that young man go down, and it wasn't from a hit in the chest, it was from the injections. Okay. I just returned from a health conference, and with some of the most brilliant minds of our time, scientists and researchers who have been sounding the alarm about the COVID injections, and nobody seems to be hearing them. They will be on the right side of history, and I hope and pray all of you will be on the right side of history. 87% of American citizens took at least one shot. Today, only 13 to 18% are receiving the boosters. Does that tell you something? People are not trusting this supposedly safe and effective vaccine. COVID community core money was disseminated for one purpose, and that was to promote the COVID vaccines. I told you about the NFL. The mRNA causes 15,000 diseases. 91 of them are genetic. There are mRNA in these shots. Now, as far as reaching the community, was it successful? Yes, and I'll tell you a little bit what happened. We went to Immokalee. There was a bus that we had wrapped that had said, please do not give injections to your children. We went over to Immokalee at a county fair. They were with all the immigrants. We had material that was written in their language. We had people that spoke Spanish. Do you know not one of them wanted to even know what we had to say? So I have to tell you that that money that was given to our county did the job. Did the job because they did not want to receive accurate information that probably would have caused them to think, to critically think about, should I take this? Is it safe and effective? So that money really did do, it was very successful in reaching this population. And I say now, give the money back. We don't need it. We didn't have it before. We don't need it now. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Scott Kiley. He'll be followed by Jill Kiley.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for allowing me time to speak on this critical issue. My name is Scott Kiley. I am a full-time resident of Marco Island. Today, we debate whether or not the CDC and their appointed subcontractors can help migrant farm workers here in Collier County with their COVID-19 health response advice. Let's discuss recent CDC performance. Number one, the CDC told us, get the vaccine and you will not get infected. You will not transmit the virus. Well, this was a blatant lie. Will the educators share this deceit with the migrant workers? Number two, when frontline doctors actually treating patients discovered therapeutics that work, right? Those drugs were taken away and doctors were threatened with loss of their license. Patients untreated were left to die. Will the CDC and Partners for Health inform the migrant workers of available, effective therapeutics? Number three, the CDC voted unanimously to add this injection, still experimental, to the childhood annual schedule. This is insane. It has never been placebo tested, and the children are said to have zero risk of dying. Will Partners for Health be telling migrant workers, the mothers, to rush their children in for a free experimental injection, maybe with a donut or a Happy Meal? What does our great governor and Surgeon General have to say about injecting children? Number four, they're still saying it is safe for pregnant women to get this injection. Women of America, please wake up. Visit dailyclout.io and learn about the baby die-off going on a global basis. Learn about the sudden surge in miscarriages. Learn about extreme menstrual irregularities women are facing post-vaccination. All of this is highly censored. Will this be shared with the migrant workers? I could go on for hours. In closing, every time that we give up authority to unelected federal agencies such as the FDA, the CDC, the HHS, we give away our freedom. Prior Speaker Jamie, COVID atrocities are not in the rearview mirror. We have a 3-year mess to clean up. Let's not make it worse. Boilerplate language can be enforced. This language stinks. It gives away our healthcare freedom forever to the HHS. Let's get back to the business of ending censorship once and for all so we can get the truth out to the public. Let's restore informed consent. Let's allow doctors to practice without fear of reprisal or persecution. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Jill Kiley. She'll be followed by Joseph Alger.
Good morning. Happy New Year, Commissioners. My name is Jill Kiley, and I'm a full-time resident of Marco Island. On December 13th, many public speakers spoke out against the grant money that Collier County received from the HHS and questioned whether it was in the best interests of the citizens of Collier County. Since Partners in Health is the sub-awardee responsible for training, I got curious and I started a web search to determine what their COVID-19 training looks like. Although they do not share their COVID-19 prevention protocols on their website, they do share the names of their partners and donors. Of special interest were the Bill and Linda Gates Foundation, Open Society Foundation, aka George Soros, Pfizer, CDC, the U.S. Department of State, the WHO. Yeah, you heard that right, the WHO. Many of the top research hospitals and universities that also receive federal monies and are still mandating the injection for their students to attend their university. All of the major pharmaceutical companies, including the ones that pay millions of dollars each year in settlements for fraud. Google, Apple, Microsoft, Walt Disney, and many, many more. Conflict of interest? You tell me. Do we know Partners in Health? Do we trust that they will be educating our friends, neighbors, and families of Collier County with the most up-to-date COVID-19 protocols? Can we trust they will be informing our citizens without bias and with informed consent, including potential adverse events, or are they beholden to their donors and partners? This is not about who is liable, and did we kick the can down the road far enough for Collier County to escape liability. Knowing our subcontractor and the information they are teaching our citizens is not just a procedural responsibility of this board. It is a moral and ethical responsibility. As Commissioner McDaniel stated in December, oftentimes when you take federal money, there are strings attached. Give the money back. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Joseph Alger. He'll be followed by Scott Sherman.
Thank you. I'm reminded of what COVID looks like in the rearview mirror. Some masks from last time. Huh? I love when Jamie, with all due respect to Jamie, he stands up there and he's a federal employee and talking about military service and everything else. I was in the military too, but one thing Jamie forgot to mention was now our military has to be vaxxed, every single one of them, and it's caused nothing but disruption within the military. I love when we get our lawyer talks about, well, you want your taxes to be raised if you're this $423,000 grant money, as if grant money is kind of like from a tree. We pay for that. That's our tax money. It's not free money. Grant money is tax money taken from us. So it's not like from a tree that comes up, so it's free. And I think the point that made here was that this $423,000, 1 year of which has already been spent, is a small portion of it, we would be led to believe, goes to COVID, I guess, is what the gentleman was trying to make. But to another point that was made, when I went out to Immokalee and we were trying to educate the locals, seemed to me like an exorbitant amount of minorities were wrapped up in masks no matter what. Even though the masking thing had long since sailed, I still to this day see an exorbitant amount of minorities walking around with masks. And the other thing is that it was true, none of them wanted to listen to the facts of not getting vaxxed. It was almost, I kept thinking, where are they getting their information? Even CNN couldn't get you this scared. Well, when I hear Jamie talk about education, I guess that's, I mean, to me, a light bulb went off. So it looks to me like there's a lot going on, a lot of education, and it's not, I don't think it's good. Also listen to terms like robust, data, access, and then we get acronyms thrown out there. I mean, you get one federal employee standing up here and we're going to say, and the other thing is, where did this guy come from? He took up a half hour of our time doing it was a sales pitch. We got to sit here and listen to a sales pitch. And you guys, I mean, I like you guys, and thank you for being here, but You're only here because we pitched a little pushback. That's why you're here. Otherwise, you're going to slip this thing through today. It was going to go through, and we weren't going to have this discussion. I'm really disappointed in you guys. I thought we were going to do better. I really thought we were going to do better. These people that came up before me are a lot more qualified, but you didn't listen to any of them. There was no listening until we pushed back, and I think it was last night, and that's the reason we're here. None of you guys were listening to these qualified people, yet here we are today. I don't know, I'm just disappointed, and I want that money sent back. I don't care if it's $400 million. I don't care if it's $4. It's still taxpayer money. I don't want it. I don't want it. Yeah, raise my taxes. Raise my taxes. I'll take the 423. I'm sure we'd all pitch in. Thanks.
Your next speaker is Scott Sherman. He'll be followed by Beth Sherman.
Thank you, Commissioners. I do appreciate you guys moving this item to where we could talk about it today. Our issue with the CDC is not that they're tracking or that there might be some rules and regulations, it's that they're giving bad medical advice. I mean, if we look at some of the historical advice they've been giving, it's really bad. Let's start with they suppressed treatments that were proven to work. In 2018, ivermectin was hailed as a miracle drug. In 2020, they were ridiculing it as a horse paste. Other drugs that were very effective for years, like hydroxychloroquine and chlorine dioxide, were also banned and ridiculed. Why? It was because if there are effective treatments, the emergency use authorization for the experimental mRNA technology, aka the bioweapon, would not have been approved. These vaccines have been proven to not stop infection or transmission, and they're now being shown to be harmful. Young males show an 84% increase in heart-related deaths. Sudden deaths of athletes has increased 1,700% since the vaccine rollout. Miscarriages are up 4,100% since in the past 2 years. We cannot, as a society, continue ignoring these statistics. Some other things that they recommend, one of my favorites is the sneeze cover. Before, when you coughed or sneezed, you put your hands up here, you covered it, and then you went and washed your hands, right? And now they say, oh, you cough into your elbow, right? How often do you wash your elbow? I mean, when you shower, probably. And then what do they say to do when you meet someone instead of shaking their hands? You bump elbows. Now, how stupid is that? You sneeze on your elbow, you never wash it, and you bump it. They're trying to spread this virus. I mean, come on, people. So we don't like the CDC, and we don't want to follow their advice. We do not want to be giving the migrants in Immokalee bad medical advice, actually dangerous medical advice, I would say. So another thing I'd like to point out is the young man that gave the presentation here for 30 minutes didn't say really what they were doing with COVID money. He said they were treating heart disease, they were treating diabetes, they were doing blood pressure medication. And he also said later that if the government gives you a grant to build a house and you don't build a house, you have to give the money back. So clearly, on the record at this meeting, he's saying they're using that money for other things than COVID. So therefore, you have to give the money back. And we really do want you to just give that money back. We want you to fund the health care in our county with no strings attached. So they're giving good medical advice, and real doctors are giving real advice. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Beth Sherman. She'll be followed by Greg Lynch. Ms. Sherman has been seated 3 additional minutes from Joe Maines. Mr. Maines, are you here in the room? Thank you. Ms. Sherman, you'll have 6 minutes.
Hello, thank you. This lovely lady here is going to put something on the screen, and this is what is on the agenda for today and what was on the agenda 9/13 of last year when it came up. You can see here clearly that it states Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. There's been a lot of pushback on you guys, which I highly appreciate from people and encourage more people to do that. But as you can see today, that was conveniently removed, which when you pull up a schedule and you're looking to see what's going on, I would have no idea if I wasn't actively looking for that. So I find that to be completely misleading and inappropriate. A comment to the county attorney. You said if they asked us anything repugnant to do, that we would not do it. So I want to read a response from Commissioner McDaniel's Executive Coordinator, Christina Tibera. Now, this is just an excerpt from this, but it is part of an executive summary that she sent out to anyone that had asked questions regarding this matter. And it says that you guys agree as applicable to, number 1, comply with existing and/or future directives and guidance from the Secretary regarding control of the spread of COVID-19. Number 2, in consultation and coordination with HHS, provide commensurate with condition of the individual COVID-19 patient care, regardless of the individual's home jurisdiction and/or appropriate public health measures. Example, social distancing and home isolation. And number 3, assist the United States government in the implementation and enforcement of federal orders related to quarantine and isolation. Sir, that is repugnant. That is the epitome of repugnant. Now, I would also like to point out that we were the only county in the entire state of Florida to do this. Why is that? I find it, Commissioner Lacastro, I emailed you guys, and I am an equal opportunity offender, of course. So, if you do something great, great. If you do something wrong, I'm going to point it out. At the last meeting, you did not believe that we were the only county in Florida to take this grant, so you called on your assistant at break to do some research, which I highly appreciate. But if you had taken the time to read the dozen or plus emails that we had sent you on this matter with links and pertinent information, including that we were the only county in Florida to accept that, you would already know that. You guys are not doing your research. You're not even listening to the people who are not just standing up here, but are sending emails. We spent a lot of time researching that in specifics. You chose to ignore it. Now, I will give a kudos to you, Mr. Saunders, because at that meeting on 9/13, you did listen. You did not respond to the emails, but I appreciate the fact that you did bring up that there were some concerns, and you asked for, I'm not sure who the woman was who did the presentation on it, but she came out and she presented what this was all about. None of this was listed in there. It was a top line, skim over the top, nothing to see here, sweep it under the rug. So whoever that woman was and whoever is helping you guys do your research, they're not doing their jobs. But the reality is, it's not their job, it's your jobs. We do not elect you to have your assistant do your research matters, especially in matters of public health. I'd find that also repugnant. I would like to reuse the term that the county attorney used. I would also like to mention, some others have mentioned, Mr. Jamie, I don't recall his last name, the gentleman who spoke for 30 minutes on this. He circled every single question that he was given. He wasted our time. He had none of this information. I personally have been media trained by the Centers for Disease Control, and that's the #1 tactic that they teach you to do. That's what the media does. When you don't want to answer a question, you just circle around it until people get so confused that they don't even remember what you asked them. So, I think you really need to look into who comes up here to speak as your authority, because that guy is not an authority and he did not present us with any information that we asked for. Next, we are the 14th wealthiest county in the entire country. Why on earth do we need to take a grant for this? You have plenty of money. We want the money sent back. We want it sent back today. Mr. Hall, you were saying, oh, well, if this happens or if that happens, we'll send it back. No, we want it sent back today. The will of the people is what you are up here to do. And for the past 2 years, I'll leave the 2 out who are the new commissioners, but the other 3 of you have not been doing the will of the people, because I personally, along with dozens and dozens of other people, have been up here month after month telling you this information. When we went on break, I had multiple people come talk to me and thank me for telling this information about the vaccine. One gentleman said that him and his wife, after they got the booster, got myocarditis, and that they had no idea that that was even a risk. Several other speakers mentioned informed consent. I want to repeat what I said in my last, under general comments. And that is that informed consent requirements were waived so that subjects don't have to be informed what is going on. It is deemed not in their best interest. That's from our Department of Defense through FOIA requests. This should be extremely concerning. and you should send the money back immediately. I also ask that anyone who's listening, I pray that you will heal. I pray that if you took this vaccine and you listen to the authorities, that you find God, because God is the only one who will heal you, and he will with just a blink of an eye. If you are prepared to come forward and talk at these meetings or sign an affidavit, I will be making a list if you come to Seed to Table on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. for the Man in the Arena show, and we will start showing that the side effects are affecting this community. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Greg Lynch. He'll be followed by Kathy Mayo.
Yes, hi there. Greg Lynch, long-term resident of Collier County. Naples, we have a problem. And the problem is there is a animal in the room whose color is pink and is also known as the pink elephant. Okay? We can all see it. There's a pink elephant in the room. We can all see it. Pink elephant in the room. What does this mean? This means that from the beginning of COVID till today, 1 million to 3 million souls have died. Okay, let me repeat that. From the beginning to today, 1 million to 3 million people have died. Now, you're not going to get that answer through your federal authorities. You're going to get it from the outside people. So I just thought I would share the little elephant with you. People are dying. That's why we want you to cancel this contract with the CDC. Cancel it. Money returned. If not, money in escrow. And we can await the grand jury decision that's going to be coming out of Tampa. Our governor, DeSantis, has accused these people of lying. Lying. Thus, we have the grand jury in Tampa. What's going to happen out of that? I don't know. But based on that alone, you look at the agreement with the CDC and Partners in Health, case closed. Put the money in escrow, put it to the side, end it now. No more jabs, no more, you're talking the last mile. Well, the last time they had an event, it was on Tamiami Trail, a couple miles south of Pine Ridge. That ain't the last mile. That's inner city Naples. I was there. So anyway, please do your research. Let's get rid of this contract, $400,000 for 3 years. My math is $1.2 million. We're in the middle of year 2. Let's end it now. Put the money in escrow. Let's keep our eyes on the grand jury coming out of Tampa. And DeSantis didn't start this for nothing. He knows something's going on. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Kathy Mayo. She'll be followed by Michelle Kelly.
Morning, Commissioners. Kathy Mayo, Naples. Again, congratulations to the new commissioners. And I do have a lot of faith in this full board. Not so much in the last, or at least a couple of them, but I'm glad we have what we have, and I do trust that you will do the right thing. I have a lot of faith in you. So, as many of you know, I'm Secretary of the CCREC, and I said it last night. I've never been so proud to be a Collier County resident and Republican, and I just want to say regarding this subject that if there's any possible strings that could ever be brought up, now or in the future, you just have to give the money back. Okay, so in speaking to what county attorney said, His first thing was, oh, well, you know, it's not a simple grant. Well, I've been doing this for 20 years. We've been getting grants for 20 years, and nothing's ever happened. Yeah, well, we're in a whole new world now, okay? We know what these three-letter agencies have done to us. We know that who would have said 20 years ago that they would have raided a former president's residence, okay, and go through his wife's underwear drawer, all right? So you can't compare now to 40 years they've been doing this with Partners in Health, or 20 years ago that we've never had imagined, you know, the monsters in the closet. Just forget about all that, because we have to deal with what we have in hand. We never would have thought 20 years ago that employers would have forced their employees to, in order to make a living and keep their job, to get this emergency use vaccine, which is nothing more than poison. And you know that my son is a staff sergeant in the Army. He's serving in Korea, which is dangerous enough, but he was forced to get this jab. And he is between the ages of 18 and 39. He's 23 years old. So I pray every day for my son and the whole military and everyone who's forced to get this shot. You see them dropping like flies. It's heartbreaking. So Dr. Latapo, as Beth mentioned earlier, he's advised against the 18 to 39-year-old getting this shot. And with the workers out there, they don't know what they're being given. They need to be informed. They need to be informed what they've already. You need to go back and talk to them and let them know what they have taken, because they don't know. They listen to the media, they trust, and so many people, like I said, 87% of the country has gotten this shot trusting the government. Well, I'm sorry. Instead of for the people, right now they're against the people for most of it. And so I'm just asking you to do the right thing, and I thank you.
Your final speaker on this item is Michelle Kelly.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Kelly. I live here in Naples. And I'm listening to everybody, and it seems to me if I took a poll and asked who trusted the CDC, not one person would raise their hand. I certainly wouldn't. I've watched the CDC lie to the American people. I've seen them harm children with the vaccine plan that they have for children starting with birth, and Hep B shot for a newborn baby is ludicrous. So as far as, and then also as far as the last commissioners, there was some push to insist upon the masks, and I couldn't understand it. I mean, they don't work. The CDC came out and eventually said it didn't work, but yet the people on the commissioner panel stated that we will continue with the mandate. There had to be a reason for it, and oh my gosh, it must have been money. So there is no free lunch, ever. You take money, you owe somebody something, and we all know that. I'm a baby boomer. I grew up with that. So as far as trusting people that want to give you something for free, doesn't sit well with me. And the future proves the past. As far as these shots, we have watched the vaccine program for children damage children for years. Autism is at 1 in 33. Who decided to do? It must have been the CDC that insisted upon that, and not one trial for that. Not one. Oh no. There was. Dr. Thompson had a trial. And he said, I've got this trial. There's all these little black children that are getting autism. And you know what the CDC said? Throw it in the garbage. So there was one, but he got rid of it. Now, I didn't even know that there was 421,000 in the balance, or 1.2 million. That's the price of a regular house now here in Collier County. So the taxes alone can cover the 1.2 million that you think is going to benefit Immokalee. I'm sorry, I didn't know about Immokalee. Here's the other thing. Look at what you're not hearing. You're not hearing that the reason they want to jab the migrant workers is so they'll be incapacitated and they won't be able to work in the fields. And that'll be the end of our produce. So that's the end game for this CDC gift. And I think everybody might want to consider that. It's what they're not saying. It's not they're going to protect the people in Immokalee. They're going to make sure that they're incapacitated so that our food shelves will have less and less food. And that's the problem. Thank you very much.
That was your final speaker, Mr. Chairman.
County Manager, what's the end game here? So, I mean, it's on the agenda. We pulled it. We've heard from all the citizens, and I don't know if the commissioners, I don't see anybody lit up here. This isn't something where, are we taking a motion? Are we voting on something?
No, sir.
I don't believe so.
This was just an informational report to the board.
Okay. Any of my fellow commissioners have comment, or I don't see anybody lit up, but Chairman McDaniel.
Passed.
Or past chairman, yeah.
My suggestion is we ask some questions of the director of the healthcare network to provide us with more information as to what in fact was being disseminated during that period of time. And from a risk reward standpoint, I concur with my colleagues who spoke up that in the event that some repugnant mandate comes from the federal government, that we certainly wouldn't abide by it, but I think the greater good being served, we should move forward, get that information, find out, and then make a decision. Maybe have another hearing, have another discussion with regard once that information's actually brought. I'd like to see that.
Commissioner Hall, and then Commissioner Collier, you're next.
So a good point was made. That is an assumption, and I feel like it's a pretty good assumption about bad health information being pushed in a narrative from the CDC or from the HHS. I agree with Commissioner McDaniel. I'd like to verify that. And if that's verified, I would be all about sending the money back immediately. And whatever procedure we have to do that, do we have to wait till another meeting? Can we call it for, I don't know what to do. I've never been here. It aggravates me.
Commissioner Colwell.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make some comments to make sure it's on record that, we were all here and we heard, and I asked a few questions of the gentleman that was presented to us from the government to speak. And the one that stuck out, and I asked the question, he made the comment that this, we've had people on the ground in Immokalee for 40 years. And I asked the question, well, did we have teams helping people for the 39 years before the grant? And we all heard, we really didn't get an answer. I didn't get an answer. And, I know our health department here in the county, and I know our state health department has been in Immokalee for years. We've not neglected these people in the farm worker villages. They've had access. You can go to Building H right now. When you leave here, you won't get through the lobby. There will be people there waiting for health care from the county health care department, okay? And like you said, $400-some thousand. Listen, COVID's behind us. Every day we exist, COVID gets weaker. Every day somebody beats COVID, your natural immunities destroy it. It is not gonna, we're behind us. And whatever they did for that first year, for those 6 months after they got up and running, I don't know if the cost to value to what they did or didn't do was worth the money. But I would like to definitely know, and I'm gonna go on record saying that if we do find out that Pfizer, because evidently Pfizer is one of the donors to one of these organizations, and Pfizer realizes only 13% is buying their drugs anymore, and it's not their drug, it's our tax dollars that the federal government gives Pfizer to give you a free shot. So there's nothing free in this whole compilation of everything we heard. We're already paying for it. And if Pfizer's seeing their dollar signs going down because they're not giving these shots out, and we find out the whole hidden truth behind this with the CDC is to push the shot on these people that they feel that may not fight back, then I definitely will be the first one to give this money back. So I just want to let everybody know that.
Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the appropriate approach for us at this point is that there are some legitimate questions concerning information provided to farm workers and others that are receiving these services that are being paid for with this grant. So I think it's appropriate, Commissioner Hall had mentioned, getting some more information. We don't have to take any specific action today. We're not being asked to approve, we have a staff report right now. We have two choices today. We can move this along and get more information, or we can demand staff to return the money immediately. I think the best approach is to get answers to Commissioner Hall's question. What type of information really is being provided? I don't know how staff can go about getting that. I think contacting our sub-grant recipient to really get some detailed information about the information that's being provided. And if we determine that there are misleading comments being made or information given to individuals that are receiving the health care benefits, then I think we need to take some action. And I think that's what Commissioner Hall has suggested. I think it's 100% correct. From what we've been told this morning, those grant proceeds are being used for a legitimate and a good purpose, and that is to provide health care to not just migrant workers. It's not just people that are working in the farm fields. It's anyone who has no real access to health care in Golden Gate Estates, in Immokalee, and in Everglades City. I think that's a legitimate goal, is to provide health care. I think that everyone would agree that we have to provide those preventive care types of things. But if there is misinformation that's being spread out, then we need to know that, and we need to take some action. So I would follow Commissioner Hall on that. I will say that one of the speakers had indicated that they had sent me emails back in September. I had, unfortunately, my assistant passed away at that time frame, and so we may have missed some emails, but I make a point of responding to everything. But we had some unusual circumstances. I'm not trying to make an excuse. Maybe that's just a bit of an explanation. So if someone has written me and I've not responded, send me another one, and we'll make sure you get a response. But I agree with Commissioner Hall that we need more information, and I think we should simply direct staff to explore this and come back to us at some point, because we don't have a mandate right now that is causing a problem, but we could in the future.
Second. You want to make that as a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that as a motion. The motion is to direct staff to explore fully the type of information that's being provided to make sure that we're not misleading people or trying to persuade people to take a vaccine that has some questionable success, and to bring that back in a reasonable period of time. Staff is very busy, and I say a reasonable period of time because we're not in a situation where something right now is happening with that grant money that's causing a problem. But that would be the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've had a motion. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. I want to just make a closing comment on this particular issue. First of all, I want to thank the citizens that have come forward. I know that a lot of strong words were thrown around, but this is how the process works. So to those of you that followed the agenda, we're all human up here. So nobody's sitting here trying to do something, under the table. And if you think that it is, this is America. This is how it works. So the same way that, you've thrown some things towards us, I think what we're all saying to you is thank you for taking a look at the agenda. Thank you for reaching out to your elected officials. That's how our process works here in the United States of America. So I don't think anybody should chastise anyone that's up here or in the audience, or likewise. This was a success today. I'd like to see this come back sooner than later. I don't think we're launching the space shuttle here or building the Empire State Building. This is obviously a hot topic. I think if we've had this money for this long, I know that a few people have said send it back immediately. We're not being mandated to do anything, but there's quite a few other things that are of concern. So what I would just tell the folks in the audience here is this isn't something we're going to shelve or kick down the road. So stay tuned. We will get with staff. I think at our next meeting, we should be able to have something. Is it going to come to a vote? Are we going to make a decision? Nobody knows that right now because we have a lot of unanswered questions. But, I'll work very closely, as we all will, with the county manager and, keep an eye on the agenda, stay in contact with us. And thank you for, coming here with your information and your concerns, because we welcome it.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner McDaniel and then Commissioner Saunders.
And I don't need you to come to the podium, but Mr. Kiley, you were communicating with me quite a bit a year or so ago with regard to some of the released data that was forced upon Pfizer. I'd like an update on that, if you could, please.
Commissioner Saunders?
Mr. Chairman, I want to respectfully disagree with one of the comments that you made, that we'd like to have this at the next meeting.
Okay.
Because I'm sure right now staff is already in the process of preparing the agenda for the next meeting, and to ask them to begin the process of getting this information. I don't think we'll get an accurate, full assessment if we rush it that much. So I would say, perhaps we can hear it at our second meeting in February. Again, it's not an emergency, but it's important.
I think I will just clarify and see if it has your support that it's at least a line item on the next agenda. It doesn't mean we vote. Doesn't mean, the line item could be staff is doing a deep dive and still has, just like we do with the rock crushing lot, we have it on the agenda. Sometimes we get a full presentation, sometimes we don't. What are your thoughts on that? Just at least having it as a subject.
Certainly we can do that, but that's going to mean that a whole lot of people are going to come. And we may wind up saying we don't have enough information. And I just want to give staff enough time to do the right job.
First of all, the folks that are out here, they come regardless. Thoughts? We're having communication up here.
My thought is as soon as possible. If we set a time certain, that puts, I specifically asked Jamie the questions that I need to hear with regard to what was being disseminated. And I don't, that's not brain surgery. There was information that was being put out, so they should be able to ascertain that in a fairly quick manner. And
we'll wait to hear back from the county manager. Why don't you give us your thoughts, at a reasonable time prior to the next meeting, and if it looks like the next meeting is not going to be, we're not going to have the data, then obviously we don't want to waste everybody's time. But I think this is something that's obviously a hot topic. Commissioner
Saunders is correct. We are in the process of preparing. As we're in this meeting, we're preparing for the next meeting. So it is a rush to get it onto the next meeting. We'll do everything we can to expedite. This is not something that's going to drag out, but I would anticipate that February is a more realistic time frame so that we're sure that we can also look at those comments brought up by the citizens and also by the residents, and also be able to talk with the partners for the parts that they're responsible for.
Okay. One thing I wanted to clarify, and there's some people up here that obviously have more a longer relationship with the healthcare network. I think there was some that came to the podium and thought the gentleman that came here, who's the CEO of the healthcare network, somehow works in Washington D.C. and he's he's a government employee. He's the new CEO of our local healthcare network here. I don't know if Commissioner McDaniel, if you wanted to expand upon that a little bit, because I know you've had a lot of depth with them, and your district certainly is a big recipient of this grant money, and most importantly, a lot of the work that the healthcare network does. So if you want to just clarify for the record.
He's not a federal employee. He is the administrator, executive director of the healthcare network, which is a federally approved healthcare provider. So he's that's what he is. He's not a federal employee.
Absolutely. I just wanted to get that on there. Commissioner Hall.
Lastly, just everybody that spoke, we're listening, and just grant us a little bit of patience. I would love to make a decision, but I don't want to make a decision based on an assumption. Even though I think that assumption is going to prove true, we want to prove it. So just be patient with it, and we're listening.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you. Well said.
Okay, County Manager. Next topic is 9C, I believe.
Yes, sir. We are on 9C. This is a recommendation to consider an ordinance repealing ordinance number 22-43, which requires residential landlords to provide 60 days written notice of a rental increase over 5% to tenants with leases of 1 year or longer.
Okay, do we have do we have any public comments on this, I would say first?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman. We have, I think it's 9.
Okay. Do we want to go with the public comment first?
At your pleasure, Chair. This has been discussed a number of times by the board. It was brought the last meeting by Commissioner Hall as a reconsideration or to get it to this point. We are here now at the point of being an advertised public hearing, but if it's your pleasure, we hear the speakers first.
Commissioner Hall, I would start with you. Do you have any opening comment or anything that you wanted to say to
I'm welcome to hear the
this?
public, and then we can discuss it and vote.
Okay, Mr. Miller, let's go to the public comments.
Sure. Your first speaker is Jackie Kay. She'll be followed by Todd Brooks. Jackie's been seated 3 additional minutes from Daniel Zagarik, and I don't think he's here. Yeah, he had a medical appointment. So Jackie will have 3 minutes, and she'll be followed by Todd Brooks.
Thank you. So commissioners and all local officials are elected to serve all members of the community equally. They took an oath on the Bible to uphold the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, and the Florida Constitution. Along with the U.S. Constitution, the Florida State Constitution guarantees equal civil and political rights to all. It is abundantly clear that in the free state of Florida, many elected officials are guilty of constitutional bad faith, as they violate both constitutions through abuse and of power as well as function. Instead of securing our rights, you all are systematically violating them. Leaders act in bad faith when they participate in the following acts. They have hidden, unrevealed agendas, are insincere and inauthentic, deception to conceal or obscure material facts, unfaithful to legal responsibilities, a malicious purpose, unfair or unreasonable conduct, and acts of sabotage, i.e. blocking affordable housing. Feigned ignorance, the intention to dominate or coerce compliance, lack of respect for the rights of others, and the expectations that others must bend to their will. Here was what David Posen, Columbia Law School professor, says about the constitutional bad faith. Constitutional bad faith, like all bad faith, is strongly linked to dishonesty and insincerity. Perhaps the most straightforward type of constitutional bad faith, and the one courts have been most willing to tackle, includes 1, facially neutral government actions that are in fact, based on illegitimate motives and purposes. The framing of these actions masks their true character. Repealing the 60-day ordinance is an act of corruption, bad faith, and constitutional bad faith. It demonstrates beyond a shadow of a doubt that some of our commissioners are in it for themselves, their donors, special interest groups, and like-minded supporters. It also shows that they do not give a damn about our workforce, local businesses, and sustaining our community. If you recall from the last meeting, it was you, Commissioner McDaniel, that said Danielle Hudson of NABOR, who represents the landlords, agreed that the 60-day ordinance should be repealed. Not only is that showing collusion, I feel, on the side of some of the commissioners to repeal this, because it takes you all agreeing to do so, but it also shows that you are colluding with special interest groups to do so. So in that way, you are intentionally harming our community by denying us the address of this. And we talk about hot button topics. This is a hot button topic, but yet it's not important enough for you all to consider it. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Todd Brooks. He'll be followed by Elizabeth Ratty.
Hello. Thank you very much for your time. I got up this morning and was watching the news, and that's the only reason I'm here. I saw it pop up this morning. I'm a local business owner here. We have struggled the last 2 or 3 years with employment. One of the biggest things is housing, and I'm sure you've already know that. I'm not a landlord, so I don't know the other side of it. I just know my side of it. We have literally spent a lot of time and a lot of money, and I have to actually go out with my employees to try to get them housing because they get denied on a regular basis. There's all kinds of, there's a lot of dirty stuff going on with the application fees. That's another time. But I don't think that 60 days notice for a rent increase is that absurd. It takes 2 to 3 weeks just to get up and move your family to a new place. I can tell you that in Naples, it takes you two months to find a place just to move to. So if you're going to be put in a position where you can't pay your bills and you're going to have to take your grocery money to pay your rent, I think that you should be given some notice. It seems like a minor ask of the landlord. I do have some other ideas that would actually help these things that we can discuss at a different time, but I just wanted to say it meant enough for me to get up this morning because we did this last year with my employees down at the restaurant, and they told me, they said, we're leaving, and I said, why are you leaving? And they said, we can't find anywhere to live. And it took me 2 weeks, and I had to literally go out and pay an entire year's rent up front to the landlord before he would even let this guy come in, and he was completely qualified. Couldn't have been a better tenant. So I'm not attacking landlords. I'm not a landlord, so I don't understand that side of it, but I do understand that we need employees, and a lot of the lower class and middle class people that we need to run this city to do the jobs that a lot of people don't want to do, they can't find a place to live. So giving them 60 days notice seems pretty fair.
Sir, are you going to stay here to the end? Because I had a question for you, but if you're a business person and you need to leave, I could ask you quickly, or when we summarize at the end, I could. Okay, all right. I'll call you up after the public speakers.
Your next speaker is Elizabeth Ratty. She'll be followed by Danielle Hudson. Elizabeth has been seated 3 additional minutes from Susan Golden, who is sitting right there.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Elizabeth Ratty, Collier County Tenant Union. I want to first start out with reading a note that was sent to me from a woman who was given 60 days notice, and grateful that she was. She said, I thank God it was in place for a moment. I got my 60-day notice on December 1st at my apartment complex. I've been a good tenant and paid rent each month. Even right after the hurricane, when we had no electricity, I paid rent on time. They are jacking up the price of my rent here, and they already know I can't afford it based on the info they already have. So they aren't giving me the option to renew. So my daughter and I are on the streets again as of January 31st. Honestly, I don't know what I would have done if I had gotten the notice on January 1st for January 31st. I am completely overwhelmed as it is. This is the second Christmas in a row I have had to move. Last year, the owner of my house I was renting suddenly decided to sell, and I had to move out December 20th. We were homeless for about 2 months until I found a tiny 400 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment for both my daughter and I. Now I have to pack up and move again, and I haven't recovered from the first one. So now we have no choice but to officially leave Collier County. I am an educator with 30 years of experience working with kids with autism and other special needs. In fact, I started the program for kids with autism in Collier County Public Schools in 1995. Prior to me moving here, there were no special autism services in Collier County Public Schools at all. Currently, I'm working privately to serve several families in Collier County with kids with severe ADHD, autism, and other behavioral issues. But now I have to tell those families as of January 31st, they will no longer get any help because I can't find an affordable place to live in Southwest Florida. And not for nothing, but I don't really feel like commuting to Naples to help families who have nice houses to live in where I can't afford a crappy apartment. So no thanks. I'll just have to help families in the places that I can actually afford to live. So now my daughter is going to have to stay with my brother in Utah so she has some level of stability until I'm settled somewhere else. And it looks like my only option of staying in Florida is to rent a room for $1,000 a month. So yeah, that's my story. And as for now, I'm concerned at this point Collier County can stew in the sewer of its own creation for the next 27 years because as of January 1st, I'm officially out. That was just one. Back before this ordinance was even passed, I received a phone call telling me that I should pull it off the agenda, that I was not going to have the support for this vote to begin with, and that I should do the nice thing and just take it off the agenda. I didn't feel right in my spirit, and I consulted community leaders and pastoral leaders we both know, and all of them came back and said, don't you dare. You have fought this long, don't give up now. That God is with you, the community is with you, and we are standing with you. That ordinance was passed. And now Ministry leader to ministry leader, did you honestly pray about this when you brought it forward? Honestly. I don't think so. I want to state for the record that this ordinance was not advertised. There was no press release. And even after we worked for months to this, it was quietly and conveniently just tucked away. There is no doubt in my mind that this was the plan all along. This ordinance has not been given any time to see whether or not it has a positive or negative effect. To say any different is just not true. I have spoken to several landlords who have no problem with this 60-day ordinance. And the ones that do are usually the unscrupulous ones that I've been dealing with for the last year. So I want to state for the record that I truly feel that any realtors, licensed, and a member of NABAR with rental properties should not be voting to repeal a signed law ordinance that directly affects oneself or their spouses. And I and many of the community find this a conflict of interest and sends a very strong self-serving message. It also sends a message that you are catering and favoring to certain affiliations and not in the interest of the community as a whole. It isn't about less government and less freedom. You can't infringe on the rights of voters, just enfranchise 48% of a district out of being able to vote and even maintain that argument. It's hypocritical. We talk about landlords should be the ones to handle their own property, and 90% of them have spoken about it all being business. We have no problem putting codes and enforcing things on businesses. But yet these landlords out of the same mouth talk about it's just business. It's all about business and no humanity. Well, I think this needs more time. We have not given it enough time. We cannot say that it will affect good or bad in any way. And to do this is negligence.
Your next speaker is Danielle Hudson. She'll be followed by Garrett FX Byron.
Good afternoon, Commission. I am Danielle Hudson. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy at the Naples Area Board of Realtors, and we are here today to speak in favor of repealing the 60-day Notice to Tenant Act. And I will go on the record and just state that we did notify our membership in November that this ordinance had passed. We've been fielding many questions, and we have been giving them best practices on how best to comply with this ordinance. That being said, we have been in opposition to this ordinance since its inception at the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee here in the county and also in the city. And our reason for opposition, there's two reasons, in fact. The first is that this ordinance and ones like it mandate additional notice timelines in addition to what was agreed upon in a lease agreement between the tenant and the landlord. And additionally, this requires notice above and beyond what is required in state law. So in Florida statute 83.5751, it states that a rental agreement with a specific duration, which is what most rentals have, a specific duration lease, if notice before vacating the property is required, a rental agreement may not require more than 60 days notice from either the tenant or the landlord. That's important because you have leases that are being written today as well as previous to this ordinance being passed that might have a timeline of 30 days notice or 45 days notice, 15 days notice, whatever was agreed upon between the tenant and the landlord in the written lease. And I want to keep repeating that. This ordinance specifically mandates an additional timeline on written leases. This does not deal with, non-written lease agreements. So this brings us to an interesting conundrum. I actually had a member ask me this question. They said, well, this doesn't impact my ability to give 30 days notice in the case of an eviction, right? And I said, no. And he said, well, proponents of this ordinance are stating there's generally two reasons why they need 60 days notice, either to relocate or to find funds. In the case of relocation, if the county commission, which you have consistently said that the landlord has the ability to set notice in cases of eviction and can also set the rent, why would relocation be different in terms of a rental increase notice as opposed to an eviction notice? If 30 days is okay and agreed upon within the lease agreement for an eviction, why wouldn't 30 days notice be fine if I'm raising my rent? The second case, in terms of needing to be able to find funds to close the gap, I would just caution of using that, and it's actually a whereas clause in the ordinance, I believe. Short of the county approving tax-funded rental assistance after the federal funds run out, those funds are self-limiting. So if we use that as a justification as to why we need an ordinance with an additional timeline for notice so that people can find funds, we just need to be mindful that those funds may run out, thus eliminating one of the reasons why you guys passed this ordinance in the first place. So, gentlemen, we understand there's a housing shortage. There's an inventory shortage on a vast scale. Our board has been talking about that since well before my time. We have a diversity of housing issue. We have a middle housing issue. But this ordinance does not address that. This ordinance also does not keep people in their homes, very generally. So what we are asking is that you do repeal it and that we spend the time that we have spent on this ordinance trying to address the problem, which is an inventory shortage, instead of the symptom, which is individuals needing more time to relocate out elsewhere. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Garrett FX Byrant. He will be followed by, on Zoom, Brandy Dickerson.
For the record, I have 2 uniforms today. These are the people that aren't here. I can't tell you where they are because I have to leave to go to Texas. I got a problem in Texas. It's a bad situation. So this is what I'm here for. This is DLC. We're calling this Mission DLC. I'm with the National Guard. I've been with the Guard since we started it a long time ago. A lot of us are still in it, and we're still fighting the people we believe should be protected. I'm speaking on behalf specifically of my 27-year-old son's mother, who's been a teacher in a Immokalee Trafford Elementary School for about 30 years now. Yeah, 30 years. She's been teaching 30 years, and she got a notice. She's only been able to rent places, and she rented, of all things, the biggest mistake you could make is renting on College Parkway in a place called Provincetown, because that just happens to be a Canadian conglomerate. And the long and short is that the guy, they're really strange apartments. They're designed where the people are living directly above you, but the stairs, they're 2-story structures. So everybody has to keep their garage door open because they can't park and open their doors. It's the yellow line. Oddly enough, she got up this morning at 4:30 and she headed out, and she had a problem because the door of the condo next to her, which is right next to her, is the guy upstairs. And the guy upstairs is a veteran compact man, and he's not a nice guy. He parked his car up against her door. She couldn't get out her front door where her car is. So she's been desperate, and she told me I got a text from her this morning. My son is in very bad shape. He's about, according to my pharmacist, he's about 2 weeks away from being dead. He's 27 years old, and he's drinking wood alcohol. Wood alcohol does not go through a human being. It kills you. That's all it's good for. He's suicidally depressed. He needs help, and she's helping people, and they're going to be booting her out, and she's got to move to another place. 30-day notice. And I've been taking care of him. He comes down and stays with me, but it's tough. You need to have a place where people can go to be safe. That's all I have to say. Thank you. If you want a shirt, you can wear it. If you really believe in DLC, this is a mission. And I got to go to a damn mission now. I got to go to, of all places, I got to go to El Paso, Texas now. I got to get on a plane and go away to El Paso. And you know what's in El Paso, where we were Fort Bliss, okay? It was a bad pass. And I've been there too many friggin' times. Thank you.
Your remaining speakers are all on Zoom. We'll begin with Brandy Dickerson, and then she would be followed by Dr. Thomas Felke. Ms. Dickerson, you're being prompted to unmute yourself if you'll do so at this time.
Ray, how many do we have on Zoom?
3, sir. Ms. Dickerson, I see you're unmuted. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. We appreciate this bringing this ordinance forward. Thank you for your service to the community. My name is Brandy Dickerson, and I'm here to provide input on the 60-day notice ordinance. I'll be addressing the ordinance from the informed perspectives of being a former landlord, property owner, former realtor, property manager, current foster parent, and former child with housing insecurity, and as a member of the Associate Leadership Collier class of 2017, who we made it our class commitment to work towards solutions concerning the Collier County affordable housing crisis. I read a quote in Week News from Commissioner, now Chairman Lacastro, that said, "I just don't pass anything because it sort of feels good. I mean, it either does something or it doesn't." I really respect that stance and hope that I can shed some light that the 60-day ordinance does actually do something. Several somethings, in fact. The 60-day ordinance buys time to gather additional resources of every kind, time to plan, time to locate housing that keeps kids in their same school districts. But most precious and most important of all, I believe 60 days notice, as opposed to 30 days notice, increases the safety of children and reduces their chance of abuse. Now, where am I coming from with that? Like I said, I'm a current foster parent. I've had 15 children in my home. The last 5 foster children, including the foster child that I currently have in my home, that is a Collier County resident, they were removed from their families, their schools, their community, their siblings, and worst of all, their innocence. Not because their parents abused them in any way, but because with only 30 days notice, their parents were sent scrambling to find affordable housing in their school districts, and in desperation, their families were forced into a choice between homelessness and communal living. These hasty communal living situations are tremendous predator doorways and became predator doorways to these 5 children that I've most recently had, leading to those children's abuse and removal from their families without their actual parents having abused them. It was literally their living situation based on the housing crisis and this rush to communal living based on only having 30 days, which is not enough time, that it put these children in this predicament. Landlords certainly have a right to charge whatever the market will bear, but we as human beings have a responsibility to govern this housing crisis in a way that it doesn't cost children their innocence and families their stability. 60 days is the basic minimum of what we can do to provide that. Boards, communities, citizens, they're a lot like ordinances. They either do something or they don't. I hope you will keep the 60 days notice. We honored Martin Luther King at the beginning of this commission meeting, and I want to give you a quote from him in closing. Martin Luther King said, "It is all right to tell a man to lift himself by his own bootstraps, but it's cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps." So I hope that if you have any questions about what this housing crisis and how it's affected children and how 60 days can indeed buy them more safety, buy their families more stability, I would love to answer any questions about that. And I hope this maybe more unique perspective on this will encourage you to keep the 60-day notice. I know from taking care of the children in my home.
Thank you.
Your next speaker is Dr. Thomas Felke, and he's followed by Rachel Hyman. Doctor, you are unmuted. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. For the record, Dr. Thomas Felke, Associate Professor of Social Work at Florida Gulf Coast University. I apologize for not appearing in person. However, I'm on campus preparing to train students who will assist in the upcoming Collier County Homeless Point in Time Count an event which will very likely, once again, indicate an increase in the local homeless population. Commissioners, I'm addressing you today in support of the previously passed 60-day rental ordinance and strongly request that you not follow through on the expected repeal of the ordinance. Despite a previous comment by Commissioner LaCastro, advocates for the 60-day ordinance never believed it was pixie dust that would solve the affordable housing crisis which plagues Collier County. What we believe is that the 60-day ordinance can be one part of a comprehensive plan to address affordable housing in Collier County. This is a vision shared by the Naples City Council, indicated by their passing of a 60-day ordinance, just as has been done by counties across the state. Comments that the ordinance places an undue burden on landlords are unfounded. As noted by the speaker from Neighbor, Florida state statute already provides that termination of written year-to-year leases require a 60-day notice. Therefore, it's difficult to see this ordinance as imposing an undue burden. Landlords are clearly already well-versed in the practice of sending 60-day notices. I cannot imagine telling an individual at risk of losing their housing that they did not receive enough notice because sending a letter was deemed too burdensome on a landlord. In addition, comments made by a commissioner at the last BCC meeting indicated that the ordinance is not helping anyone. I question what, if any, data gathering was done to support this comment. I strongly suspect nothing was completed in this regard, particularly given the brief amount of time that has passed since the ordinance was approved. However, a Naples Daily News article from August 2022 underscores the importance of this ordinance. The article details how a 70-year-old couple was provided an option of either a 42% or 118% rent hike, which after accepting the latter resulted in a 263% rent hike, all in the span of 60 days, with the couple eventually forced to move in with their children. As we're all aware, and as underscored by Senator Pasadomo in a recent op-ed, there is no single solution to the affordable housing problem. We need to be open to any and all ideas to address this issue. We need to not engage in blatant victim blaming and gaslighting of tenants by stating, as one of our new commissioners has, that tenants should just have a talk with their landlords, or suggesting that they move out of the county if it's too expensive for them here. We can do better, but we need to be open to a variety of options, including enacting tenant-centered ordinances, restructuring county social services, and seeking out productive public-private partnerships. Thank you for the time this morning.
Thank you.
Commissioners, your final speaker on this item is Rachel Hyman. Rachel, you're being prompted to unmute yourself if you'll do so at this time. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Rachel. Some of you guys know me. I used to work for the Naples Daily News, but left in September. I'm speaking today on the request of Elizabeth Rady, just because I was the one who was at every meeting you guys had about the ordinance and also wrote about it. And I just wanted to speak to the issue of not hearing enough or not knowing if enough people have been helped by the ordinance so far. And I just wanted to point out that the ordinance was passed, on October 25th, and by the last meeting, only 49 days had passed. So I just found it confusing that you guys would expect tons of people to have been helped by the ordinance so far. But I can also speak to the fact that while I was reporting on the ordinance and the rental assistance thing, I probably spoke to 70 Collier residents about it, and 99% of those people did not want to speak on record, meaning they didn't want their name in the paper publicly advertised that they are financially struggling. So I just found that concerning in regards to the request that, I think was made at the last meeting, that you guys want people to come forward and, say that the ordinance has helped them. A lot of people are embarrassed and don't want to have to admit that kind of thing. Also, just personally speaking, as someone who rented in Swiffle, and based on the conversations I had with these 70 people, the biggest issue in Collier and Lee County has to do with, property management and the HOAs wanting to have background checks, for example, before a tenant can join their facility, whatever. and that usually takes 20 days. And then the HOA review, that can take an additional 10 days. So not only is the 60 days allowing people to find places, it's giving that enough time for them to even move into an apartment, which I think is very important. And I do want to just underscore the what has already been said about the advertisement issue. I don't understand what the importance of the that the ordinance had not been advertised. And that's only just because the news covered it, so it's definitely out there, but I don't necessarily remember you guys advertising to the degree that Lancaster kind of talked about with flyers and things like that, any of your other ordinances. So I would just wonder what the point of that is. And I think my time is over.
Thank you. Okay, is that all our public speakers?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll open it up to the commissioners. Don't see anybody lit up yet, but okay, Commissioner Hall.
So I brought this ordinance forward, not because I don't care about housing issues. I deeply care about housing issues. I'm thankful enough to be on the AHAC as part of the leadership so that we can get something resolved. I campaigned on this whole issue. There is a major problem. You're going to hear stories like, I couldn't live in my home, I had to move. You're going to hear stories like that all day long, and they will continue until we can provide some housing as a government force. We can enable people to build assets below market value so that people can either rent or own those houses. That's where we're moving forward. I wanted to repeal this ordinance because I wanted to get government out of your life. It just so happens that if you're a tenant, that government involvement helps you. If you're on the other side of the fence, it's not a burden. It's just government telling you what you have to do. I think a 60-day ordinance, or not an ordinance, but I think a 60-day notice is a thoughtful gesture between a landlord. I'm 25 years. I've had rental properties. I've had apartment complexes, mobile home parks. I've owned notes. And I always, and every resident, I had an open dialogue and an open communication. If I had a standard lease that was a 30-day notice and somebody said, hey, I would like to have a 90-day notice, due to my job or whatever, or I'm in the Army, I was all about it. I put that in the lease. So you can't legislate morality. You can't say every landlord is good. You can't say every landlord is bad. You can't say every tenant is good. You can't say every tenant is bad. So this ordinance doesn't do anything at all to affect workforce or affordable housing in our community. It's not that I don't agree with it, but what the repeal does is remove the long arm of government saying that we are telling you how you have to do your business and telling you what you have to do. When we live in a free country, we ought to be able to conduct business, and it is a business. As a landlord, I took the risk and purchased assets and allowed people to live in them. A lot of times they didn't take care of those things. They didn't pay me on time. They didn't pay me at all. But I was the one that took the risk to provide housing. I didn't owe those people housing. I was providing it. So this whole issue, I'm trying to get government out of your lives because it is a landlord-tenant relationship issue. Does 60 days help? Yes, it does. That's the discussion that people need to have with where they rent from. On the other side, as a landlord, from the landlord's perspective, if I give a tenant 60 days notice because I'm mandated to by ordinance, and that tenant hasn't had a very good pay history with me, but by law, I have to give them a 60-day ordinance, guess how much more rent I'm going to collect? Zero. Now I'm stuck with the bag for the next 2 months and probably the third month in order to get them out. So it's not because I don't care. It's not because we don't think it's important. Yes, we understand the issue, but the 60-day ordinance is not a way to go about resolving the issue. And I hope that makes sense, and I hope you've heard my heart about that.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, so my first question, it was represented by one of the speakers that this ordinance wasn't properly advertised. Is that true?
It was advertised December 21st. Proof of the advertising is in your backup.
So the answer is it was?
The answer is it was absolutely advertised.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, I want to reiterate that the 60-day ordinance doesn't fix the housing issue. The housing issue exists. It's going to exist. It's a matter of supply and demand. And one of the circumstances that we have, and this board is going to take that up in short order, is the extraordinary length of time an applicant has to go through, developer has to go through in order to get a project approved. You know, Commissioner Saunders and I were, I think, the only two here left that were party to the findings of the ULI, that Urban Land Institute, that shared with Collier County that we don't have an affordable housing crisis. We have a housing affordability issue. And if we were to be adding 2,000 units a year into the marketplace, that would help subside this theoretical crisis. So here we are. Over our first 5 years, we approved 9,600 units. That's 2,000 units a year. Well, when I spoke with our Director of Building and Permitting, I found out that though we had approved 9,600 units, only 1,400 of those units had actually hit the ground and were in fact available. I also found out that from the time of application until the CO, the certificate of occupancy, was issued, it was a 3-year process. From the time of application until CO, it was 3 years. So we are taking steps now. We learned during Irma, and we haven't talked about this yet. I'm gonna sideswipe Mr. French on this, but you know, we learned during, excuse me, not Irma, our most recent Hurricane Ian, that typical remodel permitting from application through approval required 11 inspections, and we were able to shorten that 11 inspection process down to 5 and still meet the state building codes. So that's one of the things that I would like to have a discussion about in the future as to how we're governing the processes for developers that are looking to bring product to the community so that we can in fact enhance the supply. I'm in support of the repeal of this ordinance. I didn't vote for it when it was passed back in October. I believe there are statutes that already exist in the state of Florida that manage the relationship between a tenant and a landlord. And I believe that this ordinance provides for a conflict for that relationship that already exists with the tenant and the landlord and their written agreement. So I support the repeal.
Before I go to Commissioner Cowell, normally we would take a break at 12:25, but I'm sure with the approval of my colleagues, I'd like to just continue and run this one to fruition unless we run into where it's going to take an excessive amount of time. But Commissioner Cowell, then followed by Commissioner Saunders, and then I have some comments.
Thank you, Chairman. Listen, we all know there's a workforce housing shortage in Collier County. It's not a mystery. It's not a, it's something I think about 24/7. It's something I think about going to bed every night because I know the 5 of us up here is going to be our biggest challenge moving forward. And it is serious, and we have to do something about it, and we have to figure it out. But we live in America, and a free market dictates what happens a lot of times in our market. And that's the juggling act that we have to deal with up here as your governing body for this county that you put us in place to do. That I hope we can really work together and with you, the community, and come up with ways and ideas to solve that problem. But like I said before, when Commissioner Hall brought this up, I had an issue with this when I remember when it got passed, when I had nothing to do with this board up here. And I always questioned the constitutionality of it. And I know we had a speaker today wanted to speak at length about the Constitution. And the Constitution doesn't say it only applies to renters. The Constitution applies to everyone, the businessman, the worker, the dishwasher, everybody in our society. It belongs to them, and it's a guardian of their rights. So we have to look at it that way. And when we, as a body, as governing up here, when there's already statute in place from the state that govern a lot of these things when it comes to tenant-landlord relations, and we're talking about a civil contract between two able bodies that agree into this contract, and us as a governing body, and when this ordinance forces us to act under the color of law at times, because we do have a punishment for the landlord, and that is a $500 fine. So now we're acting in a different way than just disputing a agreement between two people, which is a civil agreement, not a criminal agreement. But this statute forces our hand to actually file a petition and fine this person criminally. You're not going to say it is actual criminal statute, but it is forcing this body to act under the color of law. And when you do that, we have to guarantee that we are constitutionally protecting both sides. And when I read this ordinance, it does nothing to help the shortage of workforce housing in this county. And even with their own testimony, one of our people's speakers today read from their phone and said at the beginning, says, I was so thankful for the 60-day notice, but by the end of the sentence said they were still sleeping in their car. So I don't know what they were thankful for. So I was trying to figure it out as I was listening, but it didn't seem like the 60-day notice did her any good. And even it says it has to be an agreement for 1 year or longer. What's it to keep the landlords from signing 6-month leases and raising your rent every 6 months? Nothing. This does nothing. So anytime we are forced to act under the color of law and penalize somebody for an action that is a civil action between two agreeing parties, I have a problem with that. So if it's either written bad or it's not done right, we can revisit it. But the way it stands and the way it's written, I don't think it's constitutionally good for anyone within our community, and it does not solve any problems. So I would have to myself repeal it. Thank you.
Commissioner Saunders?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, obviously this ordinance is going to go away today, and that's pretty clear. However, I think this whole conversation has been very positive, and I'm delighted that this issue has been brought back. I'm delighted that we've had this conversation because it's highlighted how important this affordable housing issue is to individuals that have come here, to people that represent real human beings. I'm excited about getting solutions. I think Commissioner Hall, with your experience, and I know based on my conversations with you before you were elected, before you became a commissioner, I know you're committed to solving this problem. And I think having all these conversations over the last several months, highlighting how important this is to solve this problem, I think has been very positive. So I think I would say to the folks that supported this ordinance, and I happen to be one of them because I think it's largely symbolic, but I think somewhat helpful. And I'll vote against the repeal today, but it will be repealed. But I want to say to the folks that have spoken today about real life situations, I think you've made a difference. And I think this board, I think all 5 of us are now prepared to make some hard decisions. And I know with the leadership of Commissioner Hall and working with the AHAC, there are going to be solutions that will be real solutions for the affordable housing crisis that we're all experiencing. So Commissioner Hall, I actually appreciate you bringing this forward because it's generated a lot of good discussion that I believe will lead to some real solutions. So those are my comments. I think that this has been a good conversation, and I believe this has been a good day for the future of workforce housing in this community.
Thank you, sir. Before I ask for a motion, I wanted to just make some comments. I voted against it every time, and I knew the pluses and minuses of it, but one of the things that was important to me is, like I said, I stand by my comments. I don't vote for anything just because it feels good. But once something's passed, whether I voted for it or not, I want to see it successful. So I don't root against something because I voted against it. If 3 of my colleagues are more correct than me and I'm on the losing end of a vote, then show me what it's done. Then show me where I was wrong, or I'll eat those words. I have several disappointments with this 60-day ordinance. I'll start with advertisement. a lot of passionate people came in here banging on tables saying, "Oh my gosh, the 60-day ordinance." You know, it's not the pixie dust, but it'll make such a huge positive have such a huge positive effect. It's already late. So many other counties have passed it. So where I'm disappointed is if you were a huge supporter of it, you should have helped to advertise it. NABOR got the word out. County sort of got the word out. So even though I might take exception to what our own county attorney says, those of you that attended a meeting a couple of meetings ago, I asked our own staff. So the day it was passed and I voted against it, please tell me what you did instantaneously afterwards. And I'll say the same thing to Miss Ratty. She spoke very eloquently for months at the podium here. But to be totally transparent, I had some conversations with you, and you weren't even aware it was passed. And I would think if somebody was following it so closely, 5 minutes after we passed it, your phone would have exploded. 1,000 flyers would have been printed by a donor. Every landlord who you were in close contact with as the person who runs the tenant union, those conversations would have been happening. Yet months after October, I think it was one of our last meeting, maybe our last meeting in December, I asked multiple groups. So tell me, we're 2 months into it. I don't think that's a huge amount of time. It's not 2 years. But certainly, if this ordinance was worth the paper it was printed on, we would hear an overabundance or at least a measurable amount of success. And I was disappointed that I thought it was more of crickets, that it's passed and we have to wait and to see how the dust settles. And I would think if we had all these success stories, we wouldn't have to wait for dust to settle. We would hear of them. I agree with some of my colleagues up here, and I did on all the times I thought this ordinance was government overreach, that there are already statutes and relationships between a landlord and a tenant that already exist. And I am for smaller government and not for government overreach. And so I stand by my no vote. I do agree with Commissioner Saunders. We've had a lot of healthy conversation. And if there's anybody in this room that thinks if this 60-day ordinance is canceled right now, or goes on for another 6 months, it's the biggest piece of the puzzle for affordable housing, then you're sorely mistaken. So I challenge Commissioner Hall to take up the seat that I had on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. I know we did a lot of good, but there's so much more to do. I just don't believe that this is even a major cog. And when it comes to what I say government overreach and a redundancy of statutes and relationships that already exist between tenants and landlords, I don't think it's a requirement, and I haven't heard that anything to make me feel that I was incorrect in that assessment. So unless anybody has any other comments, do I hear a motion on the floor for this issue?
So move to repeal the ordinance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
The ordinance is repealed with a vote of 4-1. Okay. We will now take a break for lunch, and we will come back at, what do you think, 1:40? Sure. 1:40.